Yes.
The lead Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1502 of the War News stream. And also, happy Easter, everybody. But in the meantime, though, we have had wild news happen today, and we are expecting major events to happen over the next day or so. We are hearing that U.S. forces are actively preparing to completely obliterate Iran in less than 48 hours, and it appears to be a serious threat. We've also seen Ukraine destroyed Russia's largest Black Sea fleet port today in what they're calling a Pearl Harbor-style attack on Russia's port. And also, we have seen that the IRGC has begun abandoning at least one or two of their border posts near the Iraqi border for some unknown reason. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we have been able to hear of significant developments from the Middle East, Eastern Europe, East Asia, and also North America as well. We have been able to hear that over the course of the past 24 hours, it does appear that the United States of America has been able to conduct a significant psychological operations campaign, at a minimum, against the Islamic Republic of Iran, as the President of the United States has openly declared that the Islamic Republic of Iran has 48 hours to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, otherwise we are going to completely destroy the country and largely raise the thing from the ground up. We have been able to see that at the same time, due to unforeseen or unknown circumstances, a decent number of checkpoints and road checkpoints throughout the area of northwestern Iran are being abandoned, which is leading us to believe that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps may be abandoning its positions to try and seek shelter before the strikes begin, or to try and abandon the service of the IRGC before they are directly hit by whatever sorts of attacks will be coming here within the near future. At the exact same time, we've also been able to see that within the Middle East, there has been a conclusion to the recovery of the weapons systems operator, which we were able to announce the safe recovery of last night, and we've also been able to hear of other significant developments within that area as well, as the Islamic Republic of Iran showed picture and video evidence of the remnants of the small airstrip that the United States had created preemptively to be able to try and secure pilots that may have been shot down within this area, and was used by special forces during the recovery of the weapons systems officer. We've also seen that those aircraft were destroyed and appeared to have been sabotaged before the special forces teams abandoned the area. And we also saw some remaining aircraft today that appeared to be a part of U.S. Special Forces flying at incredibly low altitude and high speed through the country, apparently leaving the Islamic Republic of Iran, suggesting that there were even a larger number of Special Forces operators that were there over the course of the day, even after the weapons systems officer had been safely recovered. We have also been able to hear that the weapons systems officer's injuries were extensive. He suffered a sprained ankle and hid under a rock at the top of a mountain, waiting for the United States to eventually find him. I'd have to say that for the amount of casualties that were sustained, that is probably the best casualty report we've ever heard so far in any of the conflicts that we've seen over the past few years. Additionally, we've also been able to hear that there were significant strikes in the major city of Avaj within that area over the course of the day, and U.S. armed forces have been conducting significant bombardments throughout the country. We have also been able to hear that several ships, around 15, were allowed through the Strait of Hormuz today, far smaller than any normal number of ships that have passed through the strait, but it is still the largest volume that we've seen since the blockade started at the very beginning of the conflict. However, the IRGC has made it clear that they are going to be making this blockade indefinite, and it will not have an end at any point in the future, whether the war ends or not. They have also shot down attempts at negotiations today where the United States offered a ceasefire in return for the Iranians opening up the Strait of Hormuz during that period of time. The Iranians did refuse that. We have now also heard that apparently, as a result of this, we have seen that the Islamic Republic of Iran is now attacking U.S. forces at an even larger degree than we've seen in prior days, attempting to show that their resolve has been unbroken and that they will continue the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz to an indefinite period of time. Significant strikes were reported at the Camp Victory base in Baghdad and also at the U.S. bases near to Erbil, with a decent amount of strikes also being seen within the Kurdish areas of northern Iraq. We've also been able to see that Israel is currently under a missile barrage as we speak. Outside of the region, we've also seen that the People's Republic of China has been maintaining a large area of closed airspace for an incredibly long duration of time over the Eastern Theater Command for 40 days now, which is leading us to believe that they may be preparing for some significant war games, or they may be trying to conduct preliminary actions to see if an invasion of Taiwan would be possible given their current air power and combat capabilities. We've also seen as well within the United States of America several governmental statements that came out over the course of the day, including continued statements about the complete destruction of Iran, and we've also now heard that the president has backtracked prior statements where he stated the war would be over in 2 to 3 weeks, and has now said today that there is no timeline to end the war, and the war will go on as long as it needs to until it reaches some sort of a necessary conclusion. Just a little bit north of Iran and inside of the Black Sea, the Ukrainian armed forces were able to lay hell onto the Russian Federation today and have completely destroyed the oil loading port of Novorossiysk. The attack was significant and overwhelming, and the explosive volumes seen during these attacks were incredibly large, even suggesting that FP-5 Flamingos may have been used in the midst of the attack. Some Russian military bloggers have equated this to the Russian equivalent of Pearl Harbor, but sadly, folks, there isn't really a pearl to be found in Novorossiysk. It actually appears that the entirety of the harbor is covered in an ice schlick of oil, and from what we also understand, this is knocking out one of the largest oil loading ports within the entirety of the Black Sea once again, and we also understand that this may have completely destroyed the pier that is used to load oil onto the ships, meaning that this port and facility may be inoperable for an incredibly long period of time. We also saw that other significant drone attacks were conducted within the area of the Russian Don near to Novorossiysk over the day. We also were able to get additional news that there were more hits that happened in Kostovo, just south of Nizhny Novgorod, and we've also been able to hear that the Russian Federation is continuing to assist the Islamic Republic of Iran with direct military intelligence over the course of the day, and we've also been able to hear that the Moscow Higher Combined Arms Command School was also hit and destroyed today inside of Moscow by a Ukrainian attack. The Ukrainian armed forces have also been inflicting significant losses onto the Russian Federation once again today, and have largely been holding the battlefield initiative. But before we get on into all of this news, I do have to say that we have an absolutely incredible fundraiser tonight for none other than USO, and I hope that we are able to see that we hit the fundraiser goal for that. But before we get on into our breaking news, starting with our largest stories of the night, and then working our way on down to the smaller ones, we actually have breaking news that's coming out on air right now. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so we have active breaking news right now. Just to keep you all up to speed, right now we're seeing a massive exchange of missile fire between Iran and Israel, and we are aware that the U.S. Air Force is currently airborne right now and conducting attacks in the capital city of Iran, which is, of course, Tehran. Right now we're seeing massive plumes of smoke rising from Azadi Square inside of Tehran, and it looks to be that these airstrikes are a little bit larger than usual. So, real quick, Enforcer, before we play that video in its entirety, I also want to say this. we are getting preliminary reports right now that the U.S. might have just targeted the new supreme leader of Iran, which is the son of Khamenei, which is Mujtaba Khamenei. It's being reported that he has been targeted in a precision strike, but we don't know his condition as of right now. So it's very possible that we could get some confirmation in the next coming hours that maybe Mujtaba has been taken out, possibly, but that is to be seen a little bit later on down the road. But right now, some very big developments happening once again tonight, live on the air. So, Enforcer, walk us through this footage too.
And we can see here that near to the area of Azadi Square, which is a significant area of the Islamic Republic of Iran, it holds a significant value to the Islamic regime, as the Azadi Monument is one that is incredibly significant to the Tehran skyline, and also there's a significant amount of government buildings and military installations that can be found in the outer peripheries around the Azadi Square and the Azadi Park. We can actually see smoke rising from one of those areas, and also the sound of rumbling explosions off in the distance as this clip plays, which we'll show y'all right here. When you hear the wind and also the fire in the distance with the smoke rising into the moonlight, which we can see right up there. This does appear to show that there are currently major attacks that are ongoing within that area right now, and we've also been able to hear that Khamenei's somewhat flamboyant son may have just been targeted within Qom in Iran tonight. We're not entirely sure about the validity of this information right now, folks, because prior information actually told us that Khamenei's boy here, Mujtaba, had actually been sent to Moscow because he had apparently suffered some significant injuries during the bombing that killed Khamenei, and they had to conduct emergency surgery on him there, and he may have returned to Iran. We never heard any information that he did return to Iran clearly, but it appears that there might be some sort of information that we're now getting that he may have returned to Iran, he may have been in Qom, and the U.S.-Israeli strikes that have been targeting Qom at the moment may be attempting to try and knock him out as well, meaning that we might be seeing that he might be taken out, or we might get some information here within the next day or two that he was actually killed in the midst of these strikes. But I want to make that incredibly clear. This is preliminary information. We have not been able to verify this statement, and we are still going to be doing all of our due diligence to be able to see if this story is a factual one or not at the moment. But just making sure to run this by y'all, just in case this becomes important later on tonight or in the next few days. Moving on.
Also, real quick, I do want to go back to that footage we were looking at for just a second, because the poster here who posted the footage, they said that the smoke was rising from Azadi Square. Now, that lit up structure you see right there in the center of the screen, I believe that is the Azadi Tower, if I'm not mistaken, or at least somewhat close to it. I believe that might be the tower itself. This was actually commissioned by Reza Pahlavi, the father, Reza, not the son. The son is still alive, he's here in the United States, but it was commissioned by the father. But I don't think the smoke right here is coming from Azadi Square. I think this is coming from the Mehrabad airport, which is right near Azadi Square. It's just a little ways away from it. And I think that's where the smoke's coming from, is I don't think they struck Azadi Square. There's really no military targets in that spot.
Yes, you are correct. This is actually the Azadi Tower, which is a significant monument inside of Tehran. But just down here into the area of the southwest is the Mehrabad International Airport, which also serves as a significant military operational facility for the Islamic Republic of Iran's Air Force. So this may be suggesting the Mehrabad International Airport was hit. And if we look at the relative geometry of the structure here, which does face east to west, we can tell that at the moment, this strike may be in one of two locations. And let me see if we can find this out a little bit better. We are looking at this thing from an angle that appears to suggest it might be looking towards the southwest. And if that is the case, then it is probably looking at something that's on fire at the Mehrabad International Airport, or one of the supporting buildings over here on the very far side of the ramp that may have also been hit and is currently on fire at the moment. So that seems to be what that video might be showing us right now.
Yeah, it appears to be the case, but we'll keep watching this, by the way. I think we're on breaking news throughout the night because these attacks are still ongoing as we speak. But for right now, though, that is the extent of the breaking news. And also, I will mention, by the way, we won't necessarily get to this right now, but we've seen a lot of Iranian missiles flying over the skies of Israel tonight, and we've seen literally videos of the missiles flying in, videos of impacts. It's chaos in Israel tonight, so not a good situation there, but we'll keep you apprised of the breaking news as it comes out.
We will be seeing what further news we have over the course of this night. But with that in mind, folks, it is time for us to continue to get on into all of the major news that we've had over the course of the past 24 hours, starting with the largest stories first and then working our way on down. Many of y'all will know that today has certainly been not devoid of any major activities, and while it is Easter Day, it apparently means that U.S. aircraft have risen to the skies to bombard the Islamic Republic of Iran to a significant amount, and also apparently this has led to significant amounts of increasing escalations by the United States as they seek to find a way to forcibly reopen or negotiate an opening of the Strait of Hormuz, considering the ongoing blockade by the Islamic Republic of Iran. Currently, we understand that at this moment in time, checkpoints appear to be abandoned near to the area of Bukhan in the Iranian region of Kurdistan, which we saw in this clip right here. We can see them driving by what appears to be an IRGC or a besieged checkpoint, which has been completely abandoned by its personnel and appears to be unmanned.
That's odd, too, for it to be abandoned right near the Iraqi border like that, which is obviously, nearby to the Kurds. So it's kind of interesting that they chose to abandon that.
It is incredibly interesting to know that they've abandoned this. This area is one of high importance and high security for the Islamic Republic of Iran, as they have had some light fears, not significant fears, but some lighter ones, that the Kurds, which are U.S.-backed, may try and conduct an offensive into their region, or may be able to try and conduct guerrilla attacks or smuggling operations to smuggle weapons to the Kurds inside of Iran for them to be able to conduct attacks against Iranian forces, including the IRGC, the Iranian Armed Forces, and the Besiege. For this reason, they have set up a large amount of checkpoints inside of cities, highways, and also the border itself to be able to try and find, detect, and stop the transit and passage of these weapons and illegal contraband into their country. From what we know, that has been ongoing ever since the first weeks of the war, and we're already seeing that now some of the outposts and checkpoints near to Bukhan, which is one of the larger cities within this area, are being abandoned. This might be giving us an idea that some of these IRGC forces are breaking for the hills, kind of like all those Iranians that went down to try and find that U.S. pilot last night, and they didn't really succeed at that, luckily. But it does seem to be a fairly interesting sort of development, and one that's showing us that some IRGC forces might be breaking for the hills sides, and there seems to be a possible reason as to why they are doing this. Currently today, the Strait of Hormuz is still closed. We did get some good news that 15 ships were allowed to pass through over the course of the past 24 hours, but we did not see that there was any large change in the situation in the strait, and right now, from what we can tell, just to show all this here in real time, there are largely not really a large number of ships still making the passage. We can actually see here a couple of vessels which apparently went to Al-Basra, and also another one that had come from an undetermined location, sadly, but it is a Japanese liquefied natural gas tanker named the Jamal. But outside of that, we have not really seen a large amount of vessels transiting the strait, and for the larger part, it's still largely closed, is the best way that I can try and even explain that. Everything is quite large dealing with the situation in the Strait of Hormuz, including the rising price of even WTI crude, as we're already seeing that the pre-market prices before the markets open here tomorrow has already reached $114 per barrel for WTI crude. WTI crude is the crude from the West Texas oil fields, and generally American oil, that is sold worldwide, and its price is a little bit different than that of Brent. We have been able to see that right now live on air the price is roughly around $111.62, and if we also take a look at Brent crude prices as well, we can actually see that WTI crude has now surpassed Brent crude, with Brent crude being some of the highest priced crude out there in the world so far with the ongoing oil crisis for its cost, which is showing us that, unlike some people have been claiming, the United States is not going to be insulated from the rapidly skyrocketing oil prices, and if this trend continues, WTI crude might actually surpass Brent crude in price per barrel of oil, and we might see that this continues to further weaken and have significant impact on the Western world and its economic abilities. We've also been able to see that this has been putting a significant amount of pressure on the United States of America, and especially its government, due to the fact that the closure and permanent blockade of the Strait of Hormuz was not really forecast by them, and it appears that at no point in the future is this going to be changing. According to the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has stated that the Strait of Hormuz will never return to its previous state, particularly for the United States and Israel. We have decent reason to believe that that is fairly credible information and a fairly credible statement that they've made, blockade, meaning that they are going to be attempting to exert permanent control over the Strait of Hormuz and largely run it as a drawbridge or a toll booth, only allowing through ships that they want and pulling up the drawbridge for ships that they don't want to pass through. And even for the ships that are allowed to pass through the drawbridge of a sort, they will be forced to pay a toll to the Iranian government, which they will then be able to use to purchase weapons from the Russian Federation and China, helping them to rearm and further ensure that it'll be a lot more difficult to attack them the next time a war might come around within the region. We've also been able to hear that the Iranians have completely rejected the talks, according to our last word, at 1:22 p.m., according to statements that were given to some media outlets. Mediators from Turkey, Egypt, and Pakistan are racing to bring Iran to the negotiating table of the United States in a bid to halt the war or reach a temporary ceasefire, but so far the efforts haven't yielded results, officials familiar with the matter stated. Iran officials have refused to compromise on their demands and have rejected a proposal to open the Strait of Hormuz in exchange for a temporary ceasefire, they said. Iran has told mediators it is unwilling to meet with American officials in Islamabad in the coming days and considers U.S. demands to end the war unacceptable. We also understand that the Iranians have countered in talks, or at least preliminary talks from what we've been able to hear, that for them to end the war, they want the United States and the international community through the United Nations to recognize that the Strait of Hormuz in its entirety is Iranian territorial waters, meaning that none of it would be international waters and there would no longer be an international waters passageway through the Strait of Hormuz if we accepted their demands, meaning that they would be able to unilaterally control the ships that pass through because they would be passing through territorial waters which even in peacetime fall under the jurisdiction and the responsibility of the Islamic Republic of Iran. So we can see that the situation is quite serious here, and it doesn't really appear that the Iranians are going to be backing off anytime soon. And a lot of people have been talking about this greater situation at large, and not only that, in the midst of all this, watching IRGC forces abandoning their posts near to the Iraqi border, and this has led a lot of people to wonder what is going on. That's a little bit odd and quite peculiar. We really haven't seen them abandon posts. Sometimes we've seen them move the posts to, say, inside of a tunnel where they can't be hit by a drone in the open air, but we've never seen posts that have just been completely abandoned so far. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so it's definitely a very interesting situation because there's been rumors for well over many weeks that the Kurds that are just on the Iranian border could decide to launch a ground invasion into Iran, basically with U.S. backing behind them. Now, we have a little bit more details about the Kurds today. It's not really good news coming out about the Kurds and the U.S. relationship, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. But why do you think the Iranian forces are abandoning their post near the Iraqi border? At least in the video that we saw at least one of those posts was completely abandoned from the looks of it. So what's going on? 45% said Iran is fearing a ground invasion and their forces are getting the hell out of the area, while 31% said Iranian forces are hiding just temporarily for right now, and 13% said it's probably just a rogue checkpoint and maybe the guys went AWOL or just decided to leave on their own accord. So I would say generally, I think with all the threats coming out of the United States right now toward Iran, that could be spooking some of the frontline Iranian border guards. I think that might be spooking some of them to a large degree. So I think it could be possibly a couple of rogue checkpoints, possibly. Maybe they decide to take off before basically shit hits the fan for the most part. But that's the only speculation I really have right now. We really need more information about it. But it's certainly interesting, though, because those border posts that we were seeing in that video, those are usually manned 24/7 because obviously it's right on the border. It's a very highly contested area. So the fact that it's empty is a pretty big deal. But Enforcer, what say you?
It is incredibly exceptional to see a post, or more so a roadside checkpoint like this, being abandoned in any circumstance in most every country, especially inside of Iran in the region that this is in at the moment it's in. This is a heavily trafficked area. A lot like how here in the United States people talk about how the cartels have certain highways and interstates that they travel around to smuggle drugs, the Kurds have a very similar thing, but mostly pertaining to firearms, weapons, and financial support for their cells and groups that they have inside of Western Iran. And that's really the main reason why they have these checkpoints inside of places like right outside of the city of Buchan on the highway, is to be able to try and stop cars and conduct spot inspections, because there is no, protections against unlawful searches and seizures inside of Iran. It largely doesn't exist. So they're able to just pop open your trunk and search the vehicle whenever they want. And if they find anything, they're able to stop the Kurds from continuing to arm and support their groups inside of the country. And these sorts of checkpoints checkpoints being abandoned, one, is completely stopping any deterrence, and two, it's also showing us that the Iranians are completely derelicting any responsibility of their own, at least as a sovereign state, to try and stop the Kurds from further undermining them within this region. This would give us a clear idea that these IRGC forces have abandoned their posts without orders for some reason. And I would say that the best explanation that I can have is that they're either scared that they're going to get hit by a drone somehow, some way, maybe like a Lucas drone, or they are scared that the Kurds are about to invade from the Iraqi border, and they don't want to be at the border checkpoint when those forces come rolling in and possibly get, unfortunately, shot and killed in the ensuing firefight that may occur in that split-second moment. One of those two is fairly likely, but they're apparently afraid of some sort of armed action happening against them, and that will really be the only reason I could deduce that they may have abandoned that border checkpoint and apparently several others within that area, according to word that we were able to get today. So moving us on out of that area of northwestern Iran and back down into the Strait of Hormuz, which generally is the main story of the day, and the abandoning of checkpoints in northwestern Tehran is more so in the background. But we were able to hear that apparently there is a significant threat that has been issued today by the United States of America, or particularly the President of the United States. And this was today's statement. Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the effing strait, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Yallah, President of the United States.
Man, honestly, folks, I said this in a short video earlier today. I thought this was a fake post. Like, I read this the first time, and I thought it was not real. I thought maybe somebody was doing a parody or something. But I went and checked on Truth Social, and I saw it over there, too, on the guy's page. And I was like, no way. I was like, this is wild, like wild language right here. Also, by the way, he said he'll make them live in hell. And also the language being used in that post too is wild. And also, here's the part I couldn't figure out. What's this praise to Allah business at the end of the post? Is that mocking the Iranians, or what does that mean?
And also, why was it on Easter?
Yeah, that seems a little strange.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of it, but apparently this is now the standing foreign policy approach. So not to do this again, but I kind of have to do this. It's obligatory. It's a union requirement that we remind you all of the approaches that we've taken over about the past 9 days. 9 days ago, it was you have 10 days to open the Strait of Hormuz, we're going to start bombing everything. And then 2 days after that, the president then stated, it's actually not our problem at all, it's Europe's problem, and we're going to do nothing to open the strait, and Europe's going to have to do it entirely on their own. And then 2 days after that, we stated, it really isn't anyone's problem, it's kind of ours, but not really, because once the war ends, the strait will open naturally. Then the last statement, which was before this one, was that we were going to give them 2 more days, which was the end of the 10-day deadline initially, to open up the place, or we were going to start bombing critical infrastructure throughout the country, including power plants, desalination plants, and stuff like that. Now today, we have been able to hear that apparently we're going to turn the country into a living hell, or and largely destroy the country just completely, if they don't open the strait. So apparently we have been able to get at this point, folks, just due to the different foreign policy approaches that have been taken over the past 9 days or so, and about the 6 different approaches that have been made, we're now getting the larger understanding that this is a problem for the United States, the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, because most of them have been heavily emphasizing that we need the Strait of Hormuz open, instead of it always being Europe's problem or someone else's problem to open up the strait. So apparently the United States is considering an economic and strategic imperative to reopen the Strait of Hormuz at this point, regardless of the incredibly uncouth and largely crazy-sounding language that's used in that statement. We then were able to get further corroboration of that claim, as apparently we were able to hear that in additional statements that were made, it appears that the President of the United States then reiterated that the whole of Iran would be destroyed if they do not reach an agreement. So that was according to a statement made to ABC today, which is giving us an idea that apparently we are working off of a scorched earth principle that if the Islamic Republic of Iran does not reopen the strait, we are going to start obliterating everything inside of Iran, and that seems to be indicating that there will be a significant amount of civilian casualties, maybe even deliberately done, we're not entirely sure, that could lead to significant questionability about such a reaction to the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. But nevertheless, a lot of people are currently talking about this at the moment, and are wondering what in the world the Iranians are going to do about this. Are they going to keep the strait closed? Is the U.S. going to forcibly reopen it soon somehow, or is the Iranian regime going to get toppled in time for a new government to reopen the Strait of Hormuz? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so Iran came out today and made the statement that the West was not wanting to hear. Iran says they will never allow the Strait of Hormuz to return to normal for the U.S. and Israel especially, but also for all Western allies of the United States. So what are your thoughts about that? How will this actually end, despite the statements coming out of Iran and the United States? 33% said the strait will remain closed, while 31% said Iran will get toppled and defeated militarily, and 29% said the U.S. will reopen the strait very soon. So, unfortunately, I don't think the Strait of Hormuz will be opened anytime soon. I don't think it will. But whether or not Iran can keep it closed, indefinitely, that's another story. Because eventually, I feel like the world will have to come together to reopen the strait. And even though Europe right now is not too hot about helping the United States reopen the strait, I think they might change their mind as the global recession starts to take hold. Because there's almost certainly going to be a global recession out of this. I've been hearing all kinds of economists. They're saying that it's going to be really, really bad. And we're already seeing the oil price, as of today, the futures at least, start to skyrocket here in the United States. So I think the recession is coming. I think it's pretty much imminent at this point. So I think the world will have to come around and deal with the situation. So I feel like in time, Iran will probably get toppled and defeated in the Strait of Hormuz. But in the short term, though, it's going to remain closed. So it's definitely still a quagmire. But Enforcer, what say you?
The strait is most likely going to remain closed for the foreseeable future, and while we might see that eventually a military action is made to specifically reopen the strait, it doesn't really appear that any military plan has coalesced or is about to unfold soon that will physically reopen the strait. Even over the current foreign policy approach, or more so the threat that we've issued to Iran today, we still are not forcibly stating that we will reopen the Strait of Hormuz, hell or high water. Instead of clearing out the Strait of Hormuz or finding a way to make it passable, we're largely just threatening at this point to knock out everything inside of Iran. And to make it clear, the president made statements today to other media outlets, largely saying that regardless of what is going to be following, every single infrastructure item or item line or line item, if we want to call it that, is a target in the strikes that are to follow. And that means that we could be seeing that a large amount of strikes that would very well be most likely within the category of a war crime could be conducted here within the near future if we're taking those statements at face value, because we could start seeing the desalination plants, which generally are used only for drinking water for the citizenry, could be targeted and attacked, which clearly falls under the parameters of a war crime. We could also see that a significant amount of power plants, which really couldn't be argued to be used primarily or solely for military purposes, could also be targeted as well, which would also largely start to enter into the parameters of a war crime. We could start to see things like that happening pretty often and commonly, and that is a pretty wild thing, because here's my thinking about it, folks. If we have enough bombs to bomb water refining plants and power plants that provide electricity, why in the world can we not just use those bombs to forcibly reopen the Strait of Hormuz and just focus on the military targets themselves? Because I can tell y'all, folks, we've watched wars go on for years here on this channel, and I've never seen anyone yet succeed in causing suffering for the citizens of a country to achieve their larger strategic goals. If anything, that galvanizes a population and rallies them behind whatever government's in charge inside of their country. It keeps them going much longer than actually anticipated. We saw that happen in the Russian Federation's war in Ukraine after they started to attack significant amounts of civilians and critical infrastructure, which only had a civilian purpose to it, that most Ukrainian citizens rallied around the President Volodymyr Zelensky and the Ukrainian armed forces and continued on the resistance of the Russian Federation even to this day, much to the dismay of many people around the world, and the Ukrainian armed forces are now on the upper hand on most of the battlefield as of today. I don't really think this would be a great idea to see that such an approach is taken. I think that it'd be better just to use the bombs that we're going to hit desalination plants and power plants with to hit the actual military forces that are stopping passage through the Strait of Hormuz itself. It seems like a much more efficient and more effective way of using munitions, and it also achieves our goal outright of dealing with the Strait of Hormuz, since that's our major issue currently. So I hope that does address it the best I can, in my opinion, because while I'm thinking that might be the case for a while, that the Strait of Hormuz will remain closed, that wouldn't be the case if we started to conduct significant military actions that were aimed at reopening the Strait of Hormuz. But with that in mind, I hope that does address it the best I can. And moving us on out of that little analysis right there, we are going to be moving on into the rest of the news that we have been able to get out of the region, as we also were able to hear that while all of this was going on, we did get additional updates today on the developments of the rescue of the weapons systems operator inside of the Islamic Republic of Iran. But before we get on into that, it does appear that we currently have a question for many of y'all about the statements made by the president to make Iran a living hell and to blow up the whole country. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that right now, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so real quick to get everybody's opinions on this, I know we already covered it, but to jump into the poll real quick and then move on to the rest of our news, we are seeing that the U.S. president made in that Truth Social post probably one of the most wild statements I've ever seen come out of the president's office during my lifetime, for the most part. I've never really seen language like that used out of the White House. But however you feel about it, the statement was made, and the president threatened to make Iran live in hell. And also later on, in a subsequent interview with ABC News, he said that if they don't make a deal, then he's going to blow up the whole country of Iran, which is, obviously that's crazy. That's wild to say something like that, blow up the whole country. That's a little bit, that's pretty far-fetched. But what are your thoughts? It looks like people are pretty much split on this poll, actually. About 40% said it might be necessary. I agree with the president, while 38% said this is way too far. I disagree. And 16% said it depends on Iran's actions. Now, I'm actually with the 16%. I'm kind of in the middle on this one. I don't agree with the language that was used. I definitely don't agree with that. It's not very presidential to make statements like that. But people can feel however they want about that. It's more of a personal aspect than it is necessarily objective. But I would say, generally speaking, it depends on Iran, because if Iran takes a step like we saw the other night of starting to hit civilian infrastructure, like for example in the Gulf states, like desalination plants and power plants, then it might be necessary to start doing things like that in reciprocation to Iran to level the playing field, because we can't let Iran start destroying the entire Middle East and then not respond to it. We would have to do something. But this does not need to be taken lightly. It sounds like the president's lobbing this around like it's some type of just mere option on the table. That this is an extreme step to take. This is not light whatsoever. So they need to be very careful, making threats like this. And that right now there's a deadline for Tuesday at the evening hours, apparently. If Iran doesn't make a deal by then, apparently this whole blow up the country thing is going to start happening for the most part. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that generally I'm actually in the bit of the middle as well, because I have to say, folks, my personal stance is that causing suffering to a civilian population is never going to do anything to achieve a larger war objective. If you don't believe me on that, we can pull up endless historical examples where that didn't work. Like, for example, all of the atrocities that Japan conducted in their invasion of China in the Second World War really did nothing to help them win the war. It just made the Chinese hate the Japanese a whole lot more. Everything that the Japanese did to the South Koreans before the Second World War to keep them subjugated and a part of a Japanese colony only made the Koreans hate them with a burning passion. And if you go to South Korea as a Japanese person today, they're still generally going to dislike you quite heavily because of that back then. And it really didn't do a lot to have the Japanese see that the Koreans were endeared to them at all. If we remember what Germany did in most of Eastern Europe during the Second World War, not really a lot of people were a big fan of it, because there's about, 11 or 12 million people that were exterminated by the German government during that period of time just for the hell of it. And that generally emboldened a lot of people to fight to the death and not really give up easily. And we also saw that the Germans bombed London as well in the Second World War and many other major British cities during the Blitz, which really didn't do anything to make the British population get beat down and give up. It actually made a lot of them support the Churchill government and see that the British were able to persevere through the Battle of Britain and into America's eventual entry into the war. We've also seen that in other conflicts as well that the United States has conducted, attacking civilian populations does nothing to achieve strategic goals of the United States of America. Like, for example, our war in Vietnam, which did incur significant civilian casualties, was actually found to largely lose the hearts and minds of the local populations, which would see them join the Viet Cong and then increase the level of resistance that U.S. forces were facing out in the bush inside of Vietnam, which was not really that smart of an idea. And we've seen that sort of a thing time and time again through history. That's just a couple of modern examples of history to where civilian populations were treated somewhat poorly, or their casualties were largely just brushed off as expendable or excusable, And generally, it never turns out well. Not only that, folks. I mean, think about it from a human perspective. What kind of people are we if we're willing to say that because of the Islamic regime, we're willing to take that out on all Iranians, whether they like us or not, and make them all suffer equally because of the actions of a government that they may or may not even agree with? I don't really think
But do you
that's
think
a.
do you think it's really going to happen? Because I think the deadline, I can't remember the exact hour that he said it was going to be. It was like, I think it was like 8 p.m. EST or something like that. I can't remember the exact time though, so don't quote me on that. But on Tuesday evening, the president says that if Iran hasn't made a deal, then something's going to start happening to Iran. It could be pretty serious from the sounds of it. So do you think he's actually going to carry it out this time? Because we have heard threats like this before, and then they backed off of it and they sort of like said that, oh well, actually they're negotiating now, so we won't carry it out. I feel like, I don't want to say this time it's a certainty because we don't know, but it seems like the threat is pretty serious.
I'd have to say the threat seems a lot more serious this time around because I think that they're kind of understanding that the Strait of Hormuz issue isn't just going to disappear and it's becoming a large and unavoidable crisis like we kind of all knew it was going to be and kind of all knew it was from the very moment that they blockaded the Strait. So I would say, I think that this is a lot more serious than other times. But on the flip side, though, folks, I do have to make this argument as well because there's a little bit of a double-sided thing here. The Iranians did attack energy and desalination plants in Kuwait yesterday, which, to be entirely frank with y'all, it actually gives us a justification, considering that Kuwait is an ally of the United States, and we do have a defensive pact with them, to conduct reciprocal attacks on Iran under that guise and explain it away as, well, they're not war crimes because the Iranians did it first to one of our allies, and so now we're just doing it to them in return. But really, though, I mean, do we really want to go there? Because also on top of that, folks, it doesn't do anything to help us to achieve our goals. Because no matter how many power plants and desalination plants we bomb inside of Iran, the Iranians are still going to control and keep closed the Strait of Hormuz. And none of those attacks on any desalination plant, on any power plant, on any bridge, highway, or airfield is going to do anything for the larger part to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And so what really is the point of conducting attacks like that when it doesn't achieve a resolution to the issue that we have, which is that we want the Strait of Hormuz to be reopened? None of this approach that we're about to be undertaking, if we take the president's word at face value, is going to reopen the Strait. It just increases the suffering of the Iranian people, and we're still where we are right now. The Strait is still closed, and at this point, a whole bunch of Iranians that may have actually liked the United States are suffering now due to our actions and might actually hate us severely, and we might see that we lose any and all support on the ground for the United States in our attempted toppling of the Iranian government, making the situation even more impossible to deal with in the long-term picture years from now or decades from now. So I generally say I would hope that this is an action that is not undertaken. It's probably not going to turn out all too well. It still won't open the Strait of Hormuz. But there is definitely some room to justify the actions because of what the Iranians did to Kuwait yesterday. So I'll leave it at that. It's really up to y'all. But, I can see it going really either way, although one way is going to be quite horrendous, and I just don't see it turning out all too well, to be entirely honest with y'all. But anyways, moving us on out of that, it is time to get y'all into some crazy news, folks, that we have been able to hear inside of southwestern Iran, because the story of the weapons systems officer that was recovered by U.S. combat search and air rescue teams is not over yet. He was saved last night out of Iran by the Combat Search and Air Rescue Forces and brought back to our side and was able to escape Iran. But we've been able to get more news and information today about this whole entire operation, and it also appears that there were still special operations forces in Iran as of today, and they hadn't left yet. So that's actually a wild story here, and I'm going to be getting y'all into the greater details that we have. So let us go back to the beginning of our story when the F-15 was originally shot down. The F-15E was shot down somewhere around this area of Ram Hormuz, which is generally a city here in the middle of the desert. When the pilots were shot down and they ejected out of their aircraft, the pilot and the co-pilot apparently landed a good distance apart from each other, but combat search and air rescue teams, as we saw on video footage from that very moment, were able to actually fly in and recover the pilot himself, the main pilot, directly off the ground, scooped him right up and took him right out of the country. It was very easy to find, but the helicopters had taken some hits, and they were not able to go and spend the time to be able to try and find the weapons systems officer and recover him. So they had to fly out of the area and try and get him later. So when the weapons systems operator landed on the ground, apparently he did a Peter Griffin from Family Guy and he sprained his ankle. So he sat there for a minute holding his ankle and going, ah, and then he grabbed out his pistol and he just crawled a little bit further up the hill, and apparently he hid under a rock. I'm not even kidding. That's literally the story of what this guy did. So just to read this to y'all, this is what Reuters reported today. A U.S. source says the rescued F-15 weapons systems operator, identified as a colonel, sprained his ankle and hid in a crevice on a hilltop. So, I mean, I'm not going to lie, folks. I mean, that's absolutely crazy. I mean, the guy hit the ground, sprained his ankle, took a moment kind of holding the ankle and going, and then he just crawled up to a rock and just hid under it the whole time.
I mean, but he's sitting up there under that rock, and he's also armed as well, armed and dangerous, I guess you could say. So he's under that rock, basically like ready to strike, pretty much, if anybody came up there. I don't think the Iranians ever came close to him, though. The Iranians got a gist of where he was at when U.S. Special Forces arrived and started making their way to exfiltrate the weapons systems officer from the rock. But I don't think the Iranians ever actually found the guy. They were still lurking around the general area, and they didn't know until they saw the actual forces heading to that spot.
Yeah, I mean that's something crazy. I mean, this guy basically. I mean, this guy is the expert, folks. I think, folks, we need to have this man go to a professional hide and seek training course and be an instructor, because this guy did the smartest thing. He didn't go anywhere far. He didn't reach out to anybody. He just went up to a crevice under a rock on a hillside and just hid under there. And apparently, after he got under the rock, he got on the radio while still kind of wincing about the sprain, and he said, "God is good." And then just that was it over the radio. So apparently the Air Force heard this radio transmission from this guy of just, "God is good." And they thought that it was a trap because it was just so simple and so short. They were like, is that really the guy? Like, we don't know if it is. But still, at this point, they were dedicated in trying to find this guy. Whether or not that was a trap, they didn't really know. So they sent in all of the Special Forces guys, and they created an airfield apparently about 30 miles away from the guy because they kind of knew where he was, didn't really know exactly where he was, but they went and created a little airfield. And we actually were able to see, folks, what was left of that today, because the Iranians were able to find this teriyaki beef stick from an MRE at the site of the charred wreckage of these MC-130J Commando 2s, which lets us know Special Forces was definitely here.
Now, this is a major problem, though, because now that the Iranians have gotten their hands on our teriyaki beef sticks, this could be a major OPSEC issue right here, because if they learn the secret recipe, the U.S. could be in trouble. But in all seriousness, though, like in reality, everything of note that was at this location right here, the Little Birds, the C-130s, all those aircrafts were scuttled. There was nothing left behind for anybody to get a hold of. So all they got out of the whole thing, and also, by the way, they lost a lot of guys. I saw the casualties on the ground. The Iranian forces lost tons of people, apparently, in this little firefight right here. But all they got out of it was a beef stick. I would say they lost big time.
You know, I would say that they definitely did. We also were able to see a couple of additional things as well. This little bottle of what appears to be healthy gut juices. And we also saw a little bit of what else was there, including this stick of toothpaste and a couple of unpacked elements and items of MREs.
Oh, and also, we have hit the goal. We have just smashed the goal. We are at $2,900 raised of the $2,500 goal. And a huge shout out to everybody, by the way, for helping us hit that goal tonight for a very good charity, the USO, to help out the U.S. soldiers, of course. I see you like the bots flooding in here talking about, you guys are so anti-American. Well, I mean, you can stuff it at this point, because we're doing a very nice fundraiser for the troops, and it looks like the LSA has come through once again. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say, folks, that's absolutely incredible. And it is a wonderful and amazing thing to see that the Lee Spring Army hit the fundraising goal for USO, because USO is an absolutely amazing nonprofit, folks, that helps to keep U.S. soldiers' morale and spirits high overseas while they're currently serving, which is why USO is an incredibly and special nonprofit, and it was actually created by congressional order back in 1941, and has been with us since then. So I got to say, a humongous thanks to all of y'all once again for supporting the fundraiser for USO, because we have been able to hit the goal and able to help out American soldiers overseas with having their spirits lifted a little bit by the USO. But outside of that, we have also been able to see some additional information as well about this little airstrip that they created. We were able to see a video here showing us all that was left of the small airstrip that the Special Forces operated out of right here. This is the burned remains of an MC-130J Commando 2.
Yeah. Also, was it a prop plane?
Yes, it was. It was actually a specialized C-130 Hercules.
Interesting. Also, by the way, unfortunately, a couple of little birds also got scuttled as well, for the most part, right here. So that's a bit of a shame to see all that. But of course, I saw people saying today, why would the United States waste so many aircraft just to retrieve one guy? That's such a waste of money. Well, that's what makes the United States military so different from the rest of the world, is we leave no man behind. Nobody gets left behind. And also, we will go to the ends of the earth. And I will say that's a very commendable quality of the U.S. military. We will take whatever aircraft losses, equipment losses, whatever we need to take to get our people back. And thankfully, we got this one back too in a pretty masterful operation for the most part. So to me, I could care less the aircraft were lost. We needed our guy back, and we got him back.
Also, folks, is an important thing about morale, because what does it say to our service members if we don't give a rat's ass about them after they're shot down, and we basically tell them that they're on their own? That would destroy a lot of people's morale, because they're going to know truly that nobody is there for them at all. They're serving a country that doesn't give a shit about them and would leave them to die if it came down to it. I would have to say, folks, the principle of never leaving a man behind is an incredibly important thing, not just for the purposes of morale, but also because it's a moral perspective here in this country. And a lot of people seem to kind of be missing morals these days, where war crimes are fine, and if we lose a pilot and he's alive somewhere in Iran, we just leave him to die, basically, at the hands of the Iranians. The U.S. doesn't operate off of those sorts of principles. That's what makes America exceptional, and that's what makes America what it is that we have some pretty high moral standards here in this country, generally, and we try and follow them the best we can, although we don't meet them all the time. But apparently, the reason why these MC-130Js, which I'll actually show you all a picture of here, this is the specialized version of the C-130 that we saw used in this operation, the MC-130J Commando 2, outfitted with some of the best turboprops that money can buy, and also a whole bunch of special gadgetry and equipment inside of the C-130 allows it to conduct some operations that normal C-130s would not be able to conduct. So it is an incredibly interesting aircraft, and we also understand that a couple of MH-6 Little Birds were also apparently brought along as well, or were flown into the area, and apparently were used to ferry in some special forces possibly to the site, or were going to be used to try and fly out and grab the pilot possibly, although it appears that they were never used from what we were able to tell. We did get to hear that the reason why all of these craft were burned and left behind is that both of the MC-130s that ferried about 100 U.S. Special Operations Forces into Iran to extract the WSO suffered mechanical failures and were unable to take off. So it appears that they took some sort of structural damage, maybe to their landing gear or something else along those lines, or maybe even the fuselage by a rough landing, and for that reason they were not considered airworthy to take back off in, and so they had to leave those behind enemy lines, and then they of course destroyed them to make sure to leave nothing behind that would be usable for the Iranians, which is why they're a charred remain at this point. Lastly, we were able to see a little bit more proof here in pictures of the C-130s and their demise. We can actually see their charred remains here once again after special forces largely scuttled them. And we also were able to see the remains of the rotor assemblies of the Little Birds that also were burned to the site as well. Once these aircraft landed, an entire company of special forces, I'm guessing that they're combat search and air rescue teams, rucked it all the way from the landing site about 30 miles out to where this guy was. Apparently, once they found him, they got in a firefight of some sort, a heavy one with the IRGC and the besieged, and then were extracted near to the location at which they found the pilot, and then were able to leave. And that would almost be the end of the story. Because something else interesting happened afterwards. After we confirmed that the Special Forces team that runked it out to the WSO and found him, that then had him loaded onto an aircraft and evacuated with a sprained ankle and everything, were able to all make it out. Apparently, there were still Special Forces in country. Later on, many hours later, this is almost 8 hours after we heard the confirmation that the pilot was recovered, we saw these clips right here, which are quite interesting. And I'll show it to you here really quickly, and then we'll give a little bit of an explanation.
Look at that. Yeah, man, that is so bad. Honestly, that is so cool to me, by the way. Also, there was a second angle. I'm not sure if you got that video or not, but that, I mean, yeah, here's the second one.
Of course I got
it,
Matthew.
Look at this.
Are you doubting my acumen and abilities? Of course I got it. But here it is.
Like straight out of a movie.
So apparently, folks, what's crazy about this is that this actually confirms there were still Special Forces teams inside of the country almost 8 hours after the WSO had been recovered.
Yeah, apparently so. Also, by the way, I mean, you got to admit, this looks pretty damn cool. Like they're literally like flying over, just like really low in the plane. I will admit, it takes a lot to be special forces, but those guys really like live up to the movie hype.
They really do live up to the movie hype. I mean, they have an incredibly wild and crazy sort of a role in the armed forces. And let me see here really quickly, folks, if I can show y'all one of the ones here within the United States, because we only have 6 of these aircraft. And so they're fairly rare here within the U.S. Air Force. But let me go and get y'all a picture of an American version of this aircraft, which it appears. Yep, I have it right here. This is one of the very few C-295s that we have. These are little aircraft made by Airbus, and they're used as transport aircraft, kind of medium-sized ones for a lot of militaries around the world. But here in the United States, we basically bought these things only for infiltration and extraction missions for larger special forces elements. So it's a really cool aircraft, wildly rare to see, and from what we know, apparently some of the special forces teams were left behind that were able to recover the WSO or were in the country trying to find them, and after the WSO had been evacuated, we then had to find a window to fly these aircraft in, land them at some area that seemed to be usable for an airstrip, load up the remaining special forces teams in the country, and then, basically skirting across the ground, fly these aircraft out at full speed out of Iran to be able to get all of our people out, including the recovery teams that were there to find the WSO. And from what we know, at least from everything that we have, that appears to have concluded the entire WSO story, from his status as a missing pilot to the eventual first attempt to find him, to the second attempt to find him that successfully grabbed him, and then the evacuation of all the special forces teams and the sculling of the aircraft that were stuck on the ground and could not take off due to technical issues. That was the entire story from front to back. And I'm not going to lie, folks, I think that it is probably the best story that I've ever heard, that the WSO's injury is a sprained ankle. Because honestly, folks, yesterday when we heard that he was apparently injured, I was thinking something pretty bad, like gunshot wounds, maybe a broken limb of some sort, something pretty bad. No, it was a sprained ankle. He didn't have a broken ankle or anything like that. He just heavily sprained it. And he literally did the Family Guy thing, and they just crawled up under a rock, and apparently he picked the best rock on the planet because nobody ever found the guy the whole time he was there. And I mean, that's truly a miracle in itself. And I would have to say, folks, that this is an absolutely incredible story. While I have to say that we're not really that enthused with how the war is going in general strategically, this tactical operation here is a masterpiece. I mean, I have to tell you, folks, every time the U.S. Special Forces operates, and every time the military itself is just able to do its job the way they do it, it's always an amazing and incredible thing to see, especially at the tactical level, because all of them are incredibly well trained, wildly proficient at their jobs, and they do fantastic work. And I got to say that we have nothing but respect for the special forces teams for recovering the guy, and also for the weapons systems officer for really having a level head there and figuring out the best hiding spot on the planet to literally sit around until he was able to be rescued.
Yeah, also, the special forces are consistently good. Like, that's who carried out the operation to nab Maduro inside of Venezuela. Went off without a hitch. Very smooth operation. Also, here retrieving the F-15 weapons officer, very smooth as well. That's one aspect of our military that appears to be 100% reliable most of the time. So, they're very impressive.
Wildly impressive. I gotta say, what a crazy story there, folks. I gotta say, and also I think it's the funniest thing that the guy just put over the radio. God is good, because man, like apparently from what we're hearing from the U.S. sources, the Air Force literally just got that tiny little transmission and went, huh? And then everyone's like, what if it's a trap? Like everyone's like confused about how cryptic the message was. Because by the way, folks, they didn't know that the guy had hidden under a rock when he made that statement. So apparently he made the statement because he realized he found the greatest hiding spot he ever could. And he was just going to stay there until he could be rescued. So then he sent that radio transmission because of that, but they didn't know what it was for. So when he said God is good, they had no context for that. And they were just like, what the hell was that supposed to mean? And so then that let them know, though, that he was alive. Apparently that was the transmission he made that let them say that he was still alive and in the country somewhere. And then that's when the whole search and rescue operation for him started anew to send in everyone and go find him. But with that, we do understand that there is another story that happened across the border that has gotten a lot of people kind of up in arms a little bit, and kind of understanding where they're coming from. We were able to hear that apparently the Kurds boosted our shit. So to give you all the rundown here, we gave the Kurds a whole bunch of guns to go and give to the Iranian protesters for them to rise up against the Iranian government and be armed this time. Turns out the Kurds just boosted the stuff and they didn't send it to anyone and they just kept it for themselves. Now, there are some reasons for this, like if we're looking at it from a Kurdish perspective. The U.S. had just betrayed the Kurds in Syria, and the Kurds in Syria weren't really that happy about that, and from what we know, they communicated that immediately over to all of the Kurds elsewhere in the region, and even stated to the Iraqi ones, don't do anything to help out the United States anymore, because they use us like dogs and they betray us at the last minute. And to give you all a little bit of an understanding why they were that bitter about the whole situation, here's what happened, just in case you all weren't around then. When al-Jilani took control of Syria and ousted Bashar al-Assad, he started a military offensive in the latter part of last year against our U.S.-backed Kurds in northeastern Syria to be able to crush them and bring the country under his control. Technically, the Kurds were a larger ally to us than Jilani was, so we should have backed the Kurds and found some sort of a decent conclusion for them to see that they're not completely crushed and destroyed. Instead of doing that, the United States actually cussed out the leaders of the SDF in negotiations, asking them, what the hell do you even want, and basically screwed them over and gave them no support whatsoever, and actually supported the Jilani regime for the larger part during their offensives. In the course of those offensives, the Jilani regime took over prisons that the Kurds had controlled the entire time that was holding thousands of ISIS fighters that had massacred Kurds within that northeastern area of the country and released them back into Syria. And those people are still out there at large right now, and it doesn't really appear that the Jilani regime is really trying to track them down and arrest them again. And now we understand that these people up there in northeastern Syria, the Kurds that we backed and supported that were our allies, were betrayed at the last minute, crushed by the Jilani regime, which we supported in a flip, and now they're generally in a much worse situation for wear, and generally did all of the fighting and dying in northeastern Syria for nothing, because we betrayed them after 11 years of fighting for the larger part. So that's why the Kurds in northeastern Syria were that bitter to go and tell every other Kurdish group within the region, including the ones in Iraq that we gave the weapons to, not really to trust the United States and not really to help us out. So I wanted to make sure there, folks, before we all work off of our American perspective, to give the story of why the Kurds were that bitter, and also maybe why the Kurds in Iraq didn't really hand over the guns to the Iranian protesters, because they might have realized that we weren't going to be there for them if things hit the fan. So a lot of people currently are talking about this right now, and Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so it really is a bad situation here. It sounds like the Kurds basically finessed, stole, they kind of got greedy, however you want to describe it, and they apparently, allegedly, kept the U.S.-provided weapons that were intended to be given to the Iranian protesters when they were going out to the streets. So if you believe the story, that was a pretty lowly thing for the Kurds to do, because if their intent was to screw over the United States, they kind of did that a little bit, but at the same time, they also screwed over the protesters that were trying to rise up and overthrow the sicko Iranian regime. So I would say the people that got shafted the worst is probably the Iranian civilians for the most part. So a pretty nasty thing for the Kurds to do, I would say. But what are your thoughts about it? 32% said the Kurds just got a little bit greedy, while 32% also said it seems like a betrayal payback toward the United States, and 19% said the Kurds have basically turned on the United States. So I would say, to me, it seems like the Kurds got greedy. They got a little bit greedy here. They decided they might have had some bad feelings about the United States and wanted to get even, so stealing the weapons might have been the way to do that. But like I said, though, they really screwed over the Iranian protesters, something bad. So I would say that's not a good thing to do right there. And also, you might remember back in a couple of weeks ago, the U.S. government was saying that they were trying to coax the Kurds into conducting a ground invasion. And that was around the same point that the weapons were allegedly sent and also airdropped to the Kurdish forces. It sounds like once the Kurds got their hands on those weapons, they pretty much told the U.S., well, we changed our mind now. And they just kept the weapons and they didn't do the ground invasion, and they basically finessed us to a large degree. So on one hand, I kind of understand their anger. On the other hand, though, that's pretty underhanded. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd say I kind of get them, to a degree, because, yeah, it's messed up, and they basically, like, scammed us for the larger part, but, I kind of got to say, folks, we've been saying this for a while, and people keep bitching about this whenever we say it, but you can't treat allies like shit and use them, abuse them, and then discard them once their purpose is served, like, like we don't give a damn and then act like they're going to be loyal to us forever. I mean, I made that clear when they were getting crushed in northeastern Syria. I said this is a humongous mistake of foreign policy. It's a horrendously bad idea to allow this to go on without intervening or trying to stop it. And the Kurds are going to remember this, and we're going to lose a pretty significant ally that we've been working with in the area for decades at this point. And everyone wanted to say back then, oh, enforcer, you're just stupid as shit. Of course they're going to love us. They have no option, all that stuff. And everyone keeps on acting like because people don't have an option, we can screw everybody over and they're never going to turn against us. And the Syrian Kurds were pissed. I mean, royally pissed at what we did to them. And they made sure to let the Iraqi Kurds know. And so when it came around time for the U.S. to go to the next group of Kurds and go, hey, we want y'all to go do something for us that's incredibly risky, and some of y'all may die, but that's a sacrifice we're willing to make. They remembered what we said to the Syrian Kurds, which was the exact same thing. Hey, some of y'all might die. It's a sacrifice we're willing to make, and we'll be there for y'all. And then we weren't there for them. So they sat there and said, sure, give us the guns. They took the guns and kept them for themselves. And so, you know, that's what's going to happen. I mean, you know, like, that's why I'm saying, folks, all the time on this channel, you can't treat groups or countries like shit that we count on, because they're going to bite us in the ass, whether they have an option or not. And that's what these guys are doing right now. Like, it's not great for us, and it's incredibly annoying, and it pisses me off, but at the same time, I got to kind of look at it from their position. We acted like they were an ally and then screwed them over, and then we expect undying loyalty and devotion, and for them to lay down their lives for our greater interest, and they're not going to do that if we keep screwing them over. So I hope that does address it the best I can, because, you know, that's an important thing to remember, folks, about Europe, is that a lot of people keep dissing on the Europeans similarly, and people don't realize if we keep doing stuff like that, we're going to get bit in the ass pretty badly by them as well in similar ways here in the future. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And before we move on from that, I do want to say a humongous thanks to everyone for watching so far. Over the course of about an hour and 10 minutes, we have had a peak viewership here tonight of about 28,000 people, and about 130,000 people have watched this show since it started. And I got to thank you all so much for watching tonight. We are absolutely honored and wildly appreciative to know that so many of y'all have been enjoying this stream tonight and have been supporting the fundraiser, which has gotten up to an unbelievably large amount. And Matthew, please tell us, what amount is that, and who are the top donors in the night?
Okay, so the fundraiser is currently sitting just shy of $3,300 raised right now. So a huge shout out to the LSA for helping us to hit well above the goal, of course. And it's for a very good cause, the USO, of course. And to call off our top donors we've had so far. And also, just a disclaimer, I've been like, my brain's been going every which direction tonight with the breaking news, moderating, grabbing new pieces of Twitter posts to show on the stream, and also polls, responding to people, etc. So if I happen to miss your donation, if it's over $50, please shout it out, and I will call it out here on the air. But jumping into our top donors, so far we've had a 251 from Sylvester the Cat. So far, one of the largest ones of the night. A huge shout out to Sylvester for that massive donation. We also had a 133 from Old Warrior Fella, as well as a 125 from Tom S, and a 100 from Zeke Rose, as well as a 100 from Matt Castle, as well as Google M3, and a 50 from Samuel Sizelmansky, as well as Jackie Lou, Sadata Hosoda, Dax Salmon, David Ferriella, and also Melinda Grifford Vaughn. And a huge shout out, by the way, to all of our top donors and everybody that's donated tonight, because it's made this possible to hit the goal and go well beyond it as well. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say, an unbelievably massive shout out to everyone who supported this fundraiser tonight, the folks we are able to call out and the folks we can't call out. Each and every single one of y'all, whether y'all threw in $1 or hundreds of dollars, has helped this fundraiser to get to where it is right now, which is well above the fundraiser goal. And I gotta thank each and every one of y'all massively for helping this fundraiser to get to where it is. It's unbelievable to know that for 1,502 days, every single Sunday that we've been on air, we have been able to run a Sunday night fundraiser. And we've been able to help out a nonprofit that is helping people that we cover the news on somewhere in the world. And I gotta say a humongous thanks to everyone once again for helping out the USO, because unlike other nonprofits like the Wounded Warriors Project and the Gary Sinise Foundation, which are incredible nonprofits, they generally help out veterans and those who have formerly served. The USO is actually helping out people who are currently serving, and we are absolutely amazingly appreciative of those. So many people are supporting fundraisers like this because it's helping to give our soldiers over there overseas right now a little bit of a morale booster that the USO is able to help them, will help provide to them in the midst of this ongoing war. So humongous thanks to everyone who supported this nonprofit again tonight, once again. And with that in mind, we're actually going to take 3 questions from the chat to have a little bit of a moment to get to chit-chat with all of y'all after such an amazing feat tonight, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news, including all of our news inside of Iran and the rest of the world, and especially the war in Ukraine, which will be coming up here very soon. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first 3 questions, and also, by the way, if you have thrown a super chat tonight, so far I've just seen one. We will address those super chats at the final question segment, so that way we can dedicate enough time to address those super chats. But getting into our first live chat question, we have one here from Mary Jacobs, who said, Matthew talked before about eliminating or pausing the federal tax on gas with some backlash in the chat. And how much is it nationally? And is Congress needed for that? LLTLSA and Happy Easter. And also, by the way, let me pull that up, by the way, because I don't know right off the top of my head how much that is. Let's see, federal tax on gas amount. Let's see what that actually is. So roughly here, it says about 18.3 cents per gallon and 24 cents per gallon for diesel fuel. So it would be a help, but it's not going to be anything monumental. But it is at least a gesture to bring the prices down a little bit and shows that the federal government is trying to take steps to curtail it a bit. But also, there's also, I believe, state taxes added on the gas as well. So it's basically up to the feds and the state to try to lessen that blow a little bit with these rising costs. But also, is Congress needed for that? Federally, I believe Congress would be needed for that, I think. For the states, it's up to the states, and they have to determine that. But Enforcer, what say you?
One second. I'm trying to do some math here really quickly, because if it's, let's see, times 0.184. Oh, that's it's not really a lot, but it's a pretty decent amount. So every single day in the United States of America, roughly 377 million gallons of gasoline are purchased by U.S. citizens. And with an average tax of around 18.4 cents per gallon, that means that U.S. citizens are spending, on average, about $69,368,000 on federal fuel taxes on gasoline alone across the entirety of the country. So it would be a price savings nationally of about $69 million or so, but it wouldn't be anything wild. It's quite small, really. For diesel, it would be a little bit more it would be a little bit more hefty, but not by a lot. I mean, it's only an increase of about an additional 6 cents in taxes per gallon, which isn't a humongous amount. And also, the amount of purchases in the United States for diesel is around 166 million gallons a day instead of 377 million gallons of gasoline. So it would be a cost savings to some degree. It wouldn't be humongous, but I'd have to say that at this point, I think that we should be trying in the government to make every single I guess you could say, alleviation possible, even if it's a smaller one like that, because it is shaving off, at least for consumer gasoline purchases, $69 million nationally every day. So that's a pretty decent cost savings in some way, and we should be trying to minimize the cost to the citizenry and the impact as much as we possibly can, and that might be one way to do it, and temporarily lift that excise on gasoline and diesel. So I would say that it would be a decent move to make. It's not going to be, returning gas prices back down to normal. So right now, if it's $5 a gallon and we deleted that tax at the federal level, that tax would be gone, not for the state level. The states also sometimes charge their own taxes on gasoline and diesel as well, which adds to it. Like, for example, California, which has some of the highest taxes for a state on gas and diesel. That's why it's so high in California compared to other places. But with the federal tax deleted, the price per gallon would go from about $5 to about $4.84. Well, actually, it would be a little bit more than that. It'd be more like $4.82 or so. But it's not a significant amount of a decrease. I mean, it's not a huge amount or something that you really notice at the pump, because for an average car, you're buying like 15 gallons for a car, 17 gallons maybe, and that would be a savings of maybe a couple of bucks, but it wouldn't be returning prices back down at all to what they were before the war. So I would say it's certainly something that we should do. It's helping to shave off a couple of dollars at the pump each time, but it won't be anything, that will be, life-saving or, for that matter, making it extremely cheap like it once was before. But anyways, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the second question of the segment.
And we have one here from One Visual Eye, who said, do you think the USA will test any new weapon systems in Iran to help turn the tide of the conflict?
Not necessarily. The United States, unlike Ukraine and other smaller countries, even like Iran, generally aren't producing cheap artisanal weapons, and usually there's a significant development, research and development, and then procurement process that's undertaken here in the United States, which makes new weapons and acquisition somewhat slow, and usually it takes the course of years to see a new weapon system even make it from the drawing board to a prototype, much less something that's mass fielded and usable within the armed forces. So it's highly unlikely that we'll see anything entirely new, because also on top of that, unlike what a lot of people think, most U.S. weapon systems are actually publicly known, because there's a humongous weapons procurement and development process that goes into it, and then they kind of unveil it to the public. They won't say all of its abilities, but then they'll start fielding it into larger service, because you really can't keep weapon systems that are mass issued, even like JASSM ERs, for example. It's not given to every infantryman, but there's a lot of them. You really can't keep weapon systems like that secret, because they're just so numerous and common. The word would get out eventually that that weapon exists, whether there was a public statement on that or not by the military. So we won't really be seeing anything new, and if we ever saw anything new, it might be next year. Like, even if it was like ramped up in terms of its research and development, procurement, and mass production cycle, it would probably be next year by the time we see anything new. And I'll be entirely honest with you, I'm not really sure if this war is going to be lasting until next year at this point. It might conclude at some time at the later end of this year. So I hope that does address that the best I can. Great question, by the way. And with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be getting on into the rest of the news for the night.
All right, so this one is going to go to Justin, who said, do you think the rescue mission set us back with operational time frame?
Not necessarily. Generally, the operations continued everywhere else in the country as planned, except for around that area. But we don't really understand that there was a lot of targets in the area that the F-15 was shot down in. It seems to have been transiting through that area to get to another target location. And so it just happened to be shot down in that place at that time. But there wasn't really a lot of U.S. strikes that were going to be conducted within that area from what we were able to tell. So luckily, it didn't really do a lot to change our operational time schedules. It really had no effect on most everyone within the region, or more so the country. It really just had an effect within that very small localized area where there were basically no air operations ongoing that were air to ground at that point. So I hope that does address that the best I can, and a big thanks to you once again for an incredible question there. And with that, folks, it is time for us to move on into the rest of our news, which we do have a significant amount of it to cover. Moving us on into the rest of the news, we were able to see that within the city of Avaj today, which was near to the area where the pilot was recovered, there were some airstrikes on the ground in the city. Is this Japan? There's the hit in Avaj.
Looks like they got a little mirage in Avaj. The mirage was a little real.
Man, that mirage was a little real. I have to tell you. Meanwhile, down in Shiraz, I had to make sure that we didn't have anything in Bandar Abbas there for a moment. We were able to see some more airstrikes within the city of Shiraz as well, which we saw right there. We also were able to hear that further on up and in the area of Kermanshah, it appears that we were able to confirm that another transporter-rector launcher was destroyed today. I don't know what's up with everyone putting music in these clips now. It seems like they're about to start putting Subway Surfer below them as well here very soon to make sure that engagement remains high.
That was actually their version of breaking news, like, the breaking news riff that they play, like when something's happening, like on a mainstream channel. But except, though, you had to replace it with the Houthi news announcer voice. As you can see here, the TEL launcher is destroyed. As you can see right here, it's a total loss.
You can see right here that the TL was completely destroyed, but the United States of America was completely destroyed in the name of Yallah. But anyways, moving on from that, yeah, we also heard that there were airstrikes going on in Shiraz and Qom. We believe that some of these may be targeting Mujtaba at the moment. May he rest in piss and all. And we also were able to hear that an electronic warfare system was hit west of Tehran as well, which we saw in this clip right here, issued by the Israeli Defense Forces. Moving on out of that clip, we also saw that significant strikes were going on at the very beginning of the stream inside of Tehran, which we saw in this clip right here.
Oh my God.
Man,
I think they got hit.
I think they did. Well, I gotta tell you, that's something else. We also were able to see strikes in Tehran in this picture as well, and we also were able to hear a government statement from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. They have stated that they are preparing for a new order in the Gulf. Apparently, it's going to be a large pizza with a side of fries, but that's only my word at the moment, folks. We'll have to see what it really is here in the future. We're just doing a little trolling. But anyways, wait, hang on, let me do it right. We're just doing a little trolling. But anyways, moving us on
You
from
sound
that.
like you make a great propagandist with that laugh.
Is the United States really justified in what they're doing? It's like, well, I mean, like generally strategically, yes. It's like there's no question. It's like, anyone who's asking whether we had to fight the war or not, it's like they're asking the wrong questions. How we're fighting the war, though, that's the great question they ask. But why we're fighting the war, it's like everyone kind of knows why. If you're having to ask that, you might be a little out of the loop. But anyways, moving on from that, we have also been able to hear some further developments within northern Iraq and central Iraq in the city of Sulaymaniyah. We were able to see that there were some strikes within the area. We can hear a drone coming in. This one is Iranian.
Oh my God. Holy cow. Look at that.
Holy moly! What a crazy hit. We also were able to see that, unfortunately, over in the area of Erbil, it also appears that there were still ongoing drone strikes within this area, which looked like they were attempting to try and hit the U.S. base at the Erbil International Airport, but it doesn't appear that we could confirm any hits within that area, fortunately. But we hear the drone coming in. We hear air defense fire, and the thing flying right over, slamming into a building in Erbil.
Damn. Holy, what's all that racking, man? It sounds like the freaking pots and pans are falling down out of the kitchen cabinets. What is that?
I think that drone hit a pots and pan store. No joke, man, because it literally sounded like some pots were literally just raining down from the sky. No joke. But moving us on from that clip and all of the clips from northern Iraq, we also got to see that down in Baghdad, it appears that well, we'll get to that one here in a minute. We'll get back to the Strait of Hormuz. But we were able to see that the Iraqis were able to hit the U.S. victory base in Baghdad and cause a significant fire. But from what we know, folks, there are no U.S. forces at the victory base in Baghdad because we handed this over to the Iraqis completely right before the war started, and there were no U.S. forces left there from what we were able to hear. We also saw another clip of this as well right here. There's the fire from the victory base, which we can see burning off into the distance.
I don't think the Iraqis are doing a good job of protecting that base. I've seen that thing get hit repeatedly.
Man, honestly, they're not really doing that good of a job at anything, really. Also, on top of that, folks, because the United States hasn't been able to open the Strait of Hormuz, everyone at this point internationally, if they want to get a ship through the strait, is basically having to go and kiss the ring of the Iranians to try and get anything through. And we were able to hear that this is starting to have a little bit of an impact because the Iraqi government formally thanked the Islamic Republic of Iran for allowing a singular Iraqi oil tanker to transit the strait. And this is showing that the Iranians are certainly trying to position themselves now to be the significant power broker in the region, because if you want to continue your economic operations normally, you're going to have to bend your knee to Iran and also kiss the ring as well for them to allow even a tiny number of ships to be able to pass through the strait. That's why we have to reopen the strait, folks. If we don't reopen it, everybody in the Middle East who was kind of indifferent to us or really friendly with us is going to have to kiss Iran's ring to try and get ships through the strait. And that means that we're going to be losing a lot of control over the area because those countries are naturally going to have to distance themselves from us for their own economic and strategic interests. That's why we have to clear open the strait as well. I mean, clearing open the strait, folks, it literally basically the entire world rests on that right now, at least for the United States. If we do not do that, we stand to lose the Middle East, Europe, East Asia, and almost everything else, probably within the next decade after this failure, if this continues. We have to reopen the strait. But moving us on out of that, the Israelis also came under a significant missile attack today. Videos emerged from the area around Tel Aviv, showing us the incoming Iranian missiles and the impacts within the area as well, which we saw in a multitude of clips like these. And this one, where we were able to see that little light, that blip off in the distance confirming impacts. We also were able to see the incoming missiles as well on film. There they are.
Yikes, that's actually a pretty clear photography, those things coming in.
And we see the cluster rounds apparently being deployed at that point. And that's the end of those clips. But moving us on up and into the area of northern Israel, we also saw that Hezbollah is now landing rocket impacts pretty often within northern Israel due to the fact that Israeli air defense has largely run out of air defense interceptors. Oh man, it's having that issue. Why does it have that issue, I wonder? Methinks. It's Twitter, you know? It's a little weird with that. Every time I open up some clips on Twitter, it just completely freezes the entire browser. But luckily, we were able to fix that rapidly, folks. So moving us on out of the area of the Middle East, as we have been able to cover all of the news out of this region, we are going to be moving over temporarily into China, as we were able to hear that apparently China has quietly restricted large sections of airspace off its east coast for about 40 days, which is far longer than usual. We've also been able to hear that the restricted zones are located near the Yellow Sea and the East China Sea, not near Taiwan, and no official reason has been given. It's highly likely some form of a military exercise that they're conducting or about to conduct up there in the future. Moving us on out of East Asia, and now on into the United States of America, we have also been able to hear another interesting statement out of the United States of America's Office of the President of the United States. Last we heard, folks, it was expected that the war was going to end in 2 to 3 weeks. According to a statement by the President today to Wall Street Journal, he stated that there is no timeline for an end to the Iran war, now meaning that the war could go on for an indefinite period of time instead of there being a clear timetable from when this war will be ongoing. So take that for what you will. Moving us on out of the United States of America, we are going to be moving on and over into the region of Europe, as we have been able to hear of major actions that the Ukrainian armed forces have taken against the Russian Federation today. And so moving us on down and into where that happened, we saw, folks, that in the Sea of Azov, there was a humongous drone attack that the Ukrainians conducted on the southern front of the Russian Federation. This is called the Russian Dawn. It's called the Dawn for really no particular reasons. I actually don't know why it's called the Dawn, but the Dawn is a large flat plain in southern Russia through here, and it's the plains that lead up to the Caucasus Mountains right down here, or the Caucasus Mountains, actually. It's not the Caucasus, that's a political thing. But this leads down to the Caucasus Mountains right down here. And from what we understand, the Ukrainians really hammered this place overnight. Starting off with our first drones that came into Russian airspace at Slavyansk-na-Kubani.
Идет.
Вон летит.
The dogs of war.
Вон, смотри.
Oh! Oh, there it is!
Oh!
It's a Leoty!
Wow. That's crazy. This guy literally was right under it.
Man, he's getting a free air show at midnight.
Нихуя, он не маленький, нихуя.
Ага.
Ебал, смотри.
That's funny, man. I was going to go to the story or industry.
Man, they're in the defensive and went to Novorossiysk. Oh!
Oh.
Oh!
Ah. Well, then. He's not laughing anymore. He went quiet all of a sudden.
Man, that dog ain't
Got a
quiet,
lot. The dog's got a lot to say.
Он дальше пошел.
Он дальше пошел.
А что, промазали, что ли?
And they got real whispery all of a sudden. Oh.
Oh!
А?
And there's just a random woman coming out of the woodshed somewhere in the... Hey! Like, it's like, what the hell? Where do you come from?
Да, очень интересно, Ма.
Ебал, аккуратно дома.
It was festive in Slavyansk-na-Kubani. Further on down and in the town of Kremsk, we also were able to see that the town of Kremsk seemed to be running into some issues with incoming drones, and the air defense fire was kind of getting a little thick around here. What? Oh, blad! Oh my god!
Jeez. Look at that.
Man, the town of Kremsk was going off. They're up there somewhere, and they just start shooting everywhere. Dang. So I have to tell you that I'm quite privy to the story. By the way, of course, we're covering it. It's still shocking though to watch the clips. But to tell you all what was going on here, some drones did drop off in Slavyansk na Kubani and hit the refinery, and a couple of others did hit inside of Krems. From what we know, we don't have incredibly good footage of the impacts and the damage in those towns. But most, if not all, of the drones were just flying over these towns to get to the real meat of the attack, which was the port of Novorossiysk. The port of Novorossiysk has been hit a couple of times before, to great effect, as a matter of fact, and significant damage has been caused to this port in prior attacks. But tonight was a new night, a fresh night. According to one Russian, this is almost like one of those movie reviews on an ad. He stated, the Ukrainians are attacking the Krasnodar region. Novorossiysk is a real Pearl Harbor, arrivals at residential buildings and infrastructure facilities.
They're really going strong with that propaganda right there, a real Pearl Harbor. It's funny to me, though, like we say this all the time, the Russians hate America, they hate the West, like they really want to see the West fall, and obviously we've been rivals with Russia for ages, but yet they even use in their references, like even for their propaganda, they can't help but like steal our references, like calling it a Pearl Harbor. It's like, you know, come on now. It's like, also, by the way, propaganda to the extreme. It's like they've been hitting stuff all over Ukraine. It wasn't a Pearl Harbor then, but all of a sudden they get hit pretty hard and it's a Pearl Harbor.
Here on this day of April 5th, 2026, the forces of the state of Ukraine have conducted an attack upon the land and naval forces of the Russian Federation.
it's like, dude, it's like this kind of Pearl Harbor stuff has been going on for 2 weeks on every port in Russia. Like, this isn't new. But I will tell y'all folks that this was Pearl Harbor. like y'all about to see what happened here in a minute. And it was Pearl Harbor. So let me get y'all down into the port and try and show y'all what it looked like across the waterfront. Would y'all like to see that first? Maybe this will give y'all a little bit of a glimpse of what we're really about to be getting into, which is hell. So here it is. Oh
my God.
Maybe the allegory to Pearl Harbor is kind of accurate in this instance, man. It kind of looks like it.
Yeah, they might have been speaking truth for once.
Oh, boy. So to tell you all what happened, and so that way you'll kind of have a little bit of context behind these clips, so we aren't just watching fire in this port, the Ukrainians attacked this oil loading facility here once again. And they didn't just attack little parts of it here and there. They had a very coordinated strategy to the attack they conducted tonight. They hit the pumping station here at this specific crossroad at the port, and they also hit the major nodes right here, here, and also here on this oil loading dock, which is completely knocked it out of operation. So all the fires, like the individual plumes of fires that you're seeing, they are from here, where the mouse cursor is right there, here, and also here, which has completely knocked out most oil loading capabilities at this port. Now, let us get on into the rest of the footage, showing the entrance of the drones into the port. I'm sure that this won't be absolutely insane, uncouth, and oh my God!
Holy crap!
Oh my God!
What the?
They're
doing it again. They're literally firing. They're firing at Novorossiysk.
Oh!
Oh! I think they missed. How the hell do you miss with all that fire going everywhere? They're firing at their own city, by the way, people. That they're literally, the crossfire is going over their own city while they're trying to take out the incoming missiles and drones. It's crazy.
Oh my God. And listen to this one machine gunner that's close to this building. He literally just pulled the trigger and did not let go. Listen to it. It's not like bursts. It's just literally just ripping the whole belt. Listen.
Man, that barrel is melting down.
Bruh, that barrel was drooping down into the water by the time he was done.
Looney Tune ab barrel.
Oh my God. And then they didn't even shoot it down. They had all of that fire going on in the middle of the harbor. And then the Ukrainian drones still made it through and still hit the pumping stations. You can't make this kind of stuff up, folks. This is absolutely pitiful. Like, unbelievably pitiful. And then also, folks, the Russians tried to whip out the fine china which they ought to know not to do at this point. They fired an S-300 or an S-400 missile at one of the incoming drones, and y'all know that that's not going to work. I mean, we've watched them fire off air defense missiles for the past month, and all of them have ended up running into some residential building somewhere nearby. They never hit their target, and it happened again tonight. Like, another S-300 or S-400 missile was fired, it completely missed the drone, and then flew straight into a residential building somewhere in the city. Here's that clip. There's the missile. And there it goes into the city, and there goes the second one in the city. Oh my god!
Wait, you're saying that's the air defense missile?
Yeah, dude, that was 2 air defense missiles, actually. That wasn't just
Holy.
one.
Oh my goodness. Man, they literally had their own missiles chasing them into the city. Yo, let's see that one more time. That was wild. Literally, those were some big air defense missiles.
There's one. Oh, impact. Second one. Impact. Oh my god.
Bro, the Russians are just devastating their own city. Like, the missiles flying in, freaking small arms fire, like small arms fire for days flying over those skylines. Poor old Novorossiysk, man, they're getting slammed by their own people.
Man, the Russians, they hear the sound of a lawnmower. They're here! And they just turn the machine guns around and just start shooting into the apartment blocks. It's like, you can't make up this kind of incompetence, folks. This is like comical levels of stupidity that are happening at Novorossiysk port. And what's crazy, folks, is that every Russian air defense missile we've seen on film down here in this region over the past month, and I'm not even kidding about this, that have been fired, they've all done that. They never hit their targets, and they just end up running into some residential building in the city that they're supposed to defend, and they actually cause more damage to the residential structures than the Ukrainian attacks ever have done. Like, it's the most insane-o sort of thing that I've ever seen, that their air defenses failed at every level. The machine gunners couldn't shoot down the drones. The air defense missiles, which are guided by radar, can't even hit the drones. It's basically like the stormtroopers from Star Wars. They can't hit a damn thing down there. We also got more clips showing us this massive attack right here as well. Let's take a look at this one. Oh, bro, they got the searchlight out.
What's the purple? Like, is that a laser or something?
No, that's just a searchlight piercing through the fog. For some reason, they have like a blue tint to them, though.
Interesting.
Moving on from that clip, we then got to see what happened.
Oh my goodness.
I'm not gonna lie, folks. This gets me a damn good laugh. I'm not gonna lie. Watching how badly this went for the Russian army. I mean, This was a bad day for them.
I think this might be the worst attack that's ever happened on Novorossiysk, because we've seen all the prior attacks. Like, Novorossiysk has been hit multiple times. In fact, we just saw, like, within the last couple of months, we saw, like, a submarine get hit in Novorossiysk, and also several Russian ships. Like, that was a pretty big attack. But this is, like, one of the largest aerial attacks I've seen so far. Like, this is pretty devastating.
Let's get into this clip, because this is really going to show you how devastating this was.
Oh. It's the last stand.
There goes the pumping station, by the way. That's what was just hit. Oh, I hear another.
This looks like the hell that the U.S. is talking about putting on Iran. This is what I feel like it would look like.
Oh, brother, lighting up the place again. They don't even know where the drone is. Oh, and that thing was going in for the dive at the end. You could hear it. It was picking up speed. But also, folks, let me show y'all this, because I want to make sure to show this to y'all right here. This big fire right here, because this video is actually north of the oil loading port. It's somewhere up in this little residential building right here, or some of these residential buildings right here. So they're looking south over the Vostochny Rayon from the hills. And from what we could see, this big old fire out here that looks like it's in the middle of the sea, that's actually this oil pumping node right here on the dock. The smaller one that y'all are seeing, which is about right here, that one is the smaller node that's on the dock, which is right there. And then the huge explosion y'all just saw on film was actually on the pumping station buildings, which are right here and also right here as well. So they knocked out every single part of the facility that is vital to moving the oil onto a ship. Literally all 3 points were directly hit and knocked out from these explosions.
That's pretty devastating too, because also, by the way, Novorossiysk serves as basically like the nexus point. Like, a lot of pipelines throughout mainland Russia, they are fed basically right into Novorossiysk. And that's obviously where they load the fuel and the oil and stuff onto ships. So Now clarify this part right here. I'm not totally sure about this. We have seen Ust-Luga and Primorsk, which are very large Russian oil export ports, which accounts for about 40% of Russia's oil export abilities. Those have been taken out. Novorossiysk, I'm not sure what the exact percentage that it accounts for, but is this like pretty much like the trifecta of taking out the export capabilities for the most part?
So from what we know, I don't have the exact numbers for the port of Novorossiysk, but Western Russian oil ports make up for 90% of Russia's oil exports, meaning that if Ust-Luga and Primorsk make up 40%, the Black Sea as a whole makes up about 50%, and then the remaining 10% is on the west coast of Russia, basically just out of Vladivostok. So Novorossiysk is a fairly significant one. There are a couple of oil loading ports here, and let me bring y'all through them, folks, because it's important to have a refresher for everyone here. There are generally four, and I say four with a heavy like asterisk on the fourth one, oil loading ports within this area. The first one that we'll say is Tuops. This one's kind of big, but not the biggest, especially compared to the Novorossiysk and Taman. Then the second one, this is probably the most important one that they have outside of Taman, is Novorossiysk right here, which generally handles the highest volume of traffic from what we know. And then the largest one in terms of size is the Taman oil loading port, which is so big Google actually blurs out the piers because the satellite photography only shows the near shore area and not the deep sea. So there's a large oil loading ability here, and we know that the Ukrainians have attacked Taman in the past 2 months. They've attacked Novorossiysk almost continuously, and they've attacked Tuops as well a couple of months ago, and they also attacked Ust-Luga and Primorsk very recently. So generally we could be seeing, in the best case scenario, that 90% of Russia's oil loading capabilities could be knocked out here within the next few weeks.
Yeah, that's a big one right there. Yeah, I will say, very impressed. I'm not really sure exactly what type of weapons was used. We obviously heard the drones being used, so I'm sure Ukraine was using their full complement of attack drones, as we could hear from the sounds of it. But with some of these strikes or some of these explosions at this port, it looked very large. I'm not really sure if they used the Flamingo on this, their new like really large munition cruise missile for the most part. But we did see that being used allegedly on Ust-Luga and possibly Primorsk as well. But Enforcer, what can you tell us about that? Did it look like they were using the missile or not?
It looks like they might have used a missile in some parts of the attack, but mostly from what we could tell, usually most explosions were preceded by the sound of a drone. So we believe most of them were drone-based, and there's a very small chance that some of the impacts were actually missile-based.
Interesting. So yeah, it seems to be that Flamingo is changing the game. I know we said that before about weapons that Ukraine's produced, but the Flamingo actually is a game changer. That's basically like the homemade version of like a Tomahawk, basically. And Ukraine was unable to procure the Tomahawk. The U.S. wouldn't hand them over. And also, they weren't really able to procure the German version, what's the German version called again? I forgot the name of it right off the bat.
Let's see. The Taurus.
What's the name? Yeah, the Taurus. They weren't able to procure the Taurus either. So Ukraine said, oh, screw you all, we'll make our own. So they made the Flamingo. That seems to actually be a game changer because now they're able to hit targets and actually knock out very critical targets in one fell swoop with the missile because the warhead's so large.
Man, the Ukrainians said, well, thank you, Britain and France, for the Storm Shadow, and, it'd be kind of nice to have the German Taurus, which is kind of like them, it's like 250-mile range. But America won't give us the Tomahawk, which has about 1,250 miles of range. So F it, we'll just make our own Tomahawk, and we'll make it a little bit bigger.
It's impressive too. I mean, it's crazy. Like, I'm not just trying to glaze Ukraine, by the way, but I mean, it's genuinely impressive because the U.S. is finding out right now how hard it is to adapt to a wartime environment that uses these new forms of munitions like drones, etc. They're learning now how hard it is to adapt. The Ukrainians, they've had to go through that learning curve years ago, and they are well farther advanced. And you would think, the United States being the biggest, most, expensive spending military power on the planet, you would think that we would get that within a heartbeat, but we're not actually. It takes a big learning curve even for the United States. So it's impressive to see Ukraine, when they put their mind to something, like they just want a cruise missile, they just build the damn thing and they start fielding it a short while afterward. They've done that for pretty much everything.
Man, America be like, we have the greatest military in the world. It only takes $1.5 trillion to produce 2.4 thousand missiles, which we'll expend in about a month. And it took us about 8 years to build them all. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, I have $50 and a piece of lint. We're going to make 500 cruise missiles. Like, it's like, what? It's like, man, how the hell are they doing it? Because like the crazy thing is, folks, is that the Flamingo has a little bit longer range than a Tomahawk, and the warhead is also larger on the Flamingo than it is on a Tomahawk. And the only difference that we can tell is that the Tomahawk has a slightly smaller margin of error to its impact site, like 50 feet, give or take, and the Flamingo might be a little bit bigger than that, like 75 feet to 100 feet, give or take, but it's not that much of a difference. And I mean, this thing is bigger and longer range. And it's really crazy to think they make this stuff with basically scraps. Like they build these things in an abandoned warehouse, and they're producing them in the dozens these days a month.
Yeah. Ukraine really has a knack for being able to adapt in really like high pressure and low resource situations like that, which is why we should accept their help, by the way, because this nation here in Ukraine has a knack for that. It's a very unusual knack. Like, for example, when their drones started getting jammed a short while back, they came up with the fiber optic system and they adopted that really quickly, and they got around the whole jamming issue. For other countries, that might have taken much longer because they have a whole bunch more red tape. They have a whole bunch more expensive processes for R&D, for research and development, and we got around that, or the Ukrainians got around that really quick. So very impressive. The U.S. should take cues because, obviously we're a strong military. We're definitely stronger than Ukraine's military, but from the innovation side of things, Ukraine's got us beat.
Man, I mean, I'll be honest, I don't know at this point, like watching how the war has been going in Iran. I mean, like we have a very impressive military, and on paper it can defeat anything on the planet. But if we have poor planning like we had right now, and we tried to go to war with Ukraine at the moment today, they probably would give us a good ass beating for a good minute until we were able to beat them.
Yeah, I mean, possibly so. I mean, at least the war games kind of suggest that as well. At least when they war gamed it out with NATO, for the most part. But yeah, we should just accept their help. That's just the bottom line. Thankfully, we're allied with Ukraine. As long as we don't keep bashing them, we'll probably remain allies with Ukraine. As long as we, obviously treat them with respect, because you can't diss on them and then expect them to help. That's not going to be the way it works. They're going to eventually say, piss off the United States. We don't want that. We've been supporting them for a while, so we'd like to get a return on investment. So we don't want to just tell them to piss off, basically.
Yeah, I would have to say I think that we definitely need to stay friends with these folks because they seem to be quite good at war, and we need that kind of experience and acumen and knowledge from them because that is inexpendable to us. And not only that, they are fighting the Russians, which are an enemy of the United States, and they're doing it for pennies on the dollar. I mean, look at how much the war, folks, in Iran has costed us so far. What's the current running number, Matthew, for the cost? The last you heard.
Well, in the tens of billions, at least.
I thought it was costing several $billions a day to keep the war with Iran running.
They said there was like $3 billion a day allegedly at the very start of it, but then it kind of tapered off a little bit because they started reducing the amount of strikes. The shock and awe was the opening phase of that situation, so that's why it cost more at the very beginning. So it kind of tapered off. Don't quote me on this. I know it's tens of billions, but I don't know the exact number. But I think it's at least over 30 billion. I think, but don't quote me on that.
So if it was about, let's go with the number that was $3 billion a day so far. So it's been about 40 days now. So that's about $150 billion. And for us to fight a war with Iran for 5 weeks, that's the same amount of military support that we gave to Ukraine in equipment, not cash, over the course of about 3 years or so, because we only gave them about $150 billion of military support, and almost none of that was cash. Most of it was just weapons and equipment that we were going to retire and destroy, and we just gave it to them instead. And when you look at that, folks, the Ukrainians have fought the Russians on a shoestring budget. We hardly gave them anything monetarily to how much it's cost us to fight the war in Iran, because it has to be somewhere at this point probably around 120 to 150 billion dollars, which is the same amount we gave to them over the course of the whole war so far. And they've been knocking the teeth out of the Russian Federation every day on no budget at all from us. I mean, like, honestly, this makes the war seem very affordable on our end to just support the Ukrainians, because they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting basically for free, nearly. But anyways, we have breaking news coming out at this moment. So, Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so we are getting some breaking news that it looks like Iran has launched another large missile salvo, and apparently at Tel Aviv, from the sounds of it. It's reportedly another ballistic missile attack, and it looks like around Tel Aviv and also the surrounding cities as well are apparently being targeted by Iran. So very interesting with this. It looks like they're lobbing pretty large volleys and significant frequent volleys at Israel over the course of the last 6 hours or so. So it's disturbing because we're seeing an increase in missile attacks. If you believe what the United States is saying, then you would think that they would be decreasing the amount of missile attacks, but we're seeing the opposite. It's increasing in frequency, which suggests that the U.S. wasn't being forthcoming about the real situation here. So, Enforcer, what say you?
Fairly interesting to hear, and we'll have to continue to keep an eye on that situation and factor it into our analysis. But moving us on into the rest of our news out of Novorossiysk, because we still have a lot to cover here, folks. We do have a lot more clips of the sheer obliteration and destruction that happened in the port today. Here's another clip. Oh, boy, my boy. Moving us on from that clip and on into the next one, we also were able to see them cooking it up Gary's way. Holy moly. Like, good God.
Man, that might be the picture of the month, if that's even a thing. It might be the picture of the month because this is pretty devastating. I mean, even out of the images we've seen of the shock and all of the opening of the Iran war, I mean, Novorossiysk, they got it bad tonight.
I'd have to say they certainly got it pretty damn bad tonight. I mean, they were getting greased like down there in the port. We also were able to see someone driving by getting a little bit of footage of this. Oh, that's actually a duplicate clip. Sorry, I'll get rid of that one. Moving us on from that, we also were able to see this as well. Here's the geolocation across the port. There's the oil loading platform right where we saw that. Moving us on out of that, we also were able to see some pictures of the port as well. It's not looking good for him. It's not looking good. And for what we know, the Russian oil loading capabilities at this port have been completely obliterated, and they're going to have an issue bringing that back online. It'll probably take a couple of weeks, maybe a month, but during that period of time, they are going to be completely missing out on the lifting of the sanctions that we gave them to try and sell their oil overseas. They can't do it because they just can't get it out of the country. So, nice. Good on the Ukrainians, and I'm happy to see it. And a lot of people are currently talking right now about this attack on Novorossiysk and how damn bad it was, because it was basically that the Russians were helpless, and they were basically hitting themselves in the middle of the attack. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that whole situation that we just covered there, and what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so y'all might remember the United States said, Zelensky, you don't have the cards. You don't have the cards. And Zelensky said, I'm not here to play cards. Well, it turns out whether or not Zelensky wanted to play cards or not, he ended up playing cards, and it turns out he had the best card of them all, called the Uno Reverse, because the U.S. took the sanctions off of Russia to, allegedly try to lower the global oil crisis situation and lower the price. But at the same time, though, it kind of screwed Ukraine over because it allowed Russia to fund the war to a large degree. So Ukraine whipped out the Uno Reverse and played a little extra card game here, and now they have absolutely obliterated a huge chunk, probably at least 50% at this point, of Russia's exportability, which essentially has reversed the sanctions lifting that the U.S. did for the most part. So what do you think about this attack on Novorossiysk this evening? Wait a minute. Hold on, man. You can't put up a meme like that. I'm trying to cover a poll. Come on now. Is that Zelensky?
Yeah, that's Zelensky, man.
And that's fake, isn't it?
It's fake. It's a meme, but it's pretty funny, though.
Okay. What the hell, man? Oh, man. I tell you, man, you can't crack me up when I'm trying to do a poll. But, okay, so what do you think about the major Black Sea port of Novorossiysk getting attacked, and the largest attack that we've seen so far in Novorossiysk? 58% said Russia's becoming helpless, while 19% said Russia will strongly retaliate. 14% said this might cause something bigger than that. And I think Russia's becoming helpless. As you could see, there were no missile-based air defenses anywhere near Novorossiysk, and it's a very important port. So if Russia had the air defense systems to spare, they would definitely put them in Novorossiysk. So because of that, I would say Russia is largely becoming helpless when it comes to domestic mainland attacks on their infrastructure. And it's not new, by the way, but it looks like it might be getting worse. The gaps in air defense might be getting wider for the most part. So I'm with the 58%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that in my honest opinion, folks, the Russians have lost it. I mean, there's really nothing that can be done at this point to save their situation. They're economically destitute. They can't defend their airspace. They're losing on the front for the larger part. I mean, the front line isn't entirely collapsing like it's a blitz or anything, but they're still on the back foot. The war is over for them. They'd be smart to cut their losses and quit while they're behind, instead of trying to keep this thing going for however much longer they think they can, because they're never going to succeed. If anything, they're just going to make the situation worse and try and escalate with NATO, and then, get their teeth knocked out by the combined forces of NATO, whether it includes the U.S. or not. So probably not a good idea for them. And regardless of what people say, because I've heard someone out there say that Europe doesn't have any ships, they don't even have a military, which is just straight up bullshit. Europe is the strongest and most competent military force on the entirety of the planet. The Chinese would have a really hard time going up against them, and the only country that has a larger military funding-wise and capability-wise is us here in the United States. So generally, Europe has no natural predators in reality, and they would eat the Russians for lunch whether we were there with them or not. So the Russians would be smart to just quit now, because they're helpless at this point. There really is no way for them to win, and they really have no strategic advantage any longer. But I had to show you that, Matthew, because I was just thinking, I was like, everyone's made fun of the Ukrainians for so long, but honestly, that's kind of like Ukraine right there. I mean, that's not really like that far off. Like, Zelensky builds an oil drum airplane, and everyone's like, look at him, what's gonna do with that? And then he goes blows up the largest oil refinery in Russia 30 times with the thing.
It's absurd how much Zelensky's been disrespected. And I will say that Zelensky's obviously not perfect, by the way. We're not naive. There's no world leader in the world that's like some saint or perfect or something. And Zelensky's no exception. He's not a saint. But he's gotten so much crap, nonstop from Russia. Obviously, he's obviously at war with them, so Putin's obviously going to give him crap. He hates Zelensky pretty much with all of his heart for the most part. But Zelensky's also gotten crap, unfortunately, from the United States quite a bit. Seems to be a personal bone to pick there with that. And what's funny is the underdog, which is Ukraine, is the one that's winning the war, which is totally unexpected for a lot of people. And Zelensky still gets crapped on despite winning the war against pretty much all the odds. So, quite interesting.
Man, this picture right here is Zelensky's like, man, we could turn this thing into so many cruise missiles. Man, he's like
like a kid in the candy store. Rock candy.
Man, he was probably thinking, man, he's like, this thing costs how much? He's like, what the hell? We make these things in Ukraine for $50. Take it or leave it. Anyways, I gotta say, this is a funny meme right there. But anyways, moving on from that, it is time for us to get on into Moscow, folks, because we were able to hear today that apparently the Russians have admitted that they're helping Iran. And Lavrov spoke by phone with Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, and has stated that they called for an end to what they describe as reckless attacks on industrial and energy sites, including the Bushehr nuclear power plant. I feel like the Russians ought to just shut the hell up, because isn't this kind of really, I get that foreign policy is rules for thee, not for me, but haven't they been attacking industrial and energy sites in Ukraine for 4 straight years, and have attacked the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant multiple times, and they blew up the Zaporizhia dam, or the that would have been the Novorossiysk dam, and they just blew that thing sky high and caused a massive humanitarian crisis, and now they want to sit there and say that the U.S. is wrong for doing the same thing as them. I mean, it's I would get it if they were on a higher moral plane on how they fight a war, but considering the Russians are the worst cutthroats on the planet, it's kind of rich to hear them crying foul whenever anyone gets close to doing what they're doing. I mean, if an American wants to criticize U.S. actions in Iran right now, that's all on the table. But if you're a Russian, you have no room to talk.
Yeah, they kind of like to do a little trolling, which is kind of reminiscent of other people right now that are global leaders in the world that like to do a little trolling. That just happens to be, as a statesman, or if Russia can even consider themselves statesmen at this point. I mean, you can't go around saying stuff, doing a little trolling like this. I don't think the Russians even believe their own crap. I don't think they do. They're doing this clearly to irritate people, and also to probably cause people to get pissed, probably for the most part, kind of like we're doing right now, actually.
Yeah, probably. So the Ukrainians got them back and blew up the Moscow Higher Combined Arms Command School inside of Moscow. There it is on fire. So that was nice. Thank you, Ukraine. Have you said thank you yet? Thank you. And now I'm going to completely reverse your sanctions.
Thank you so much. And could you put me on your mascara routine that you put around your eyes?
I like how you criticized me for not wearing a suit, and then you literally stole my fit at the next rally you went to 2 weeks later. What the hell was that? You're gonna bitch on me and then do the same thing, copying my style? You're just trying to bitch on me to steal my style. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on and into the war in Ukraine. By the way, folks, I have to tell y'all, we sadly do not have a speech from Zelensky again today, but hopefully we'll have one here in the future. But moving us on down into the Sumy area, we were able to see that the Ukrainians were continuing to obliterate Russian soldiers' vehicles. Apparently, it's too much to show. I can't tell, folks. I watched the clips. They don't look that bad to me, but apparently they are. But moving on from... we've been watching stuff like that for 4 years. I think I've gotten so desensitized to what war is, folks, at this point. I can't tell if they're good to show or not until the advisory warning pops up. But anyways, we were able to see the Russian casualty report over the past 24 hours, and oh my lordy! Holy moly!
Oh, wow. They got 3 Bobcats. You know what that means? 3 for me. 3, 3, 3 for me.
3 for me. But anyways, on that though, man, I gotta tell you, 3 Bobcats, that's a good day. That's a... Holy moly! Someone call up Vinny. They've hit the Bobcat stores, and we're out of business. They're bleeding us dry here. But outside of that, Miss Decent Keeper of the Record stated that 2,427 drones shot down is the 5th highest daily loss at 206 supply trucks and supply vehicles is the 18th highest loss. And over the past 24 hours, we were able to hear that 1,180 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed, along with 6 APCs, 206 supply trucks, 4 main battle tanks, 61 artillery pieces, 2,427 drones, 3 MLRSs, and 3 Bobcat skid steers. All in all, a pretty impressive day, and it's an incredible thing to see. Moving us on out of that, it's now time for us to get to the front lines where they make the sausage. And moving us on down the front and into the Severonsky Forest, oh boy, they were really making sausage down here today. They were making hamburger meat for them. And the 63rd Mechanized Brigade, where we saw that many a Russian were dispatched effectively by their forces. And here comes the Ukrainian unmanned ground vehicle, which is doing a delivery. They call this a remote delivery. Pizza's here.
Oh my gosh, they delivered. Oh man, they delivered the wrong order.
Man, can we get a refund? No refunds. No refunds. But anyways, here goes another one. Oh, it looks effective.
Oh,
my God.
Whoa, what the hell are they using? Man, is that a thermobaric?
I don't know, dude, but it went off 7
Man, I think
times.
that's a thermobaric. I've never seen shockwaves come off anything other than a thermobaric. And this is Ukraine?
Yeah, it's Ukraine.
Wow, that's kind of wild right there. I'm not sure what munition would make a site like that unless it was a thermobaric.
Look how many of them went off. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh my God, bro! They have 4 of those little cars there. Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm kind of fascinated by whether or not Ukraine's begun using thermobarics or not. It's kind of interesting. I mean, I see some people saying it's not a thermobaric. I mean, what could this be?
It probably is a normal explosive. It's just that the fog is allowing you to easily see the shockwaves from the explosions. Because usually you only see shockwaves like that, folks, by the way, in perfectly clear weather from a thermobaric type weapon. We've seen it enough to know that. But the fog will generally make anything look like that because the shockwave is pushing the water vapors through the air in basically a wave. So it makes it kind of look like that. But it's probably normal explosives, honestly.
Interesting. Well, whatever the thing is, I don't think the Russians are going to be leaving a tip. I think this delivery driver might have to go get a different job.
Man. Oh!
Oh. And the Russian said, give me the tip.
Wait, hold up, man. Bro, this guy was right here, and that drone blew up. Watch this. And then that guy went, yeah. He just started running out the trench. It's like, bad idea, dude. Bad idea.
I think he might have felt the heat possibly a little bit. Oh, whoa, he left just in time. It turns out he was a wise Russian for once.
Man, bro, he went, yeah. And then the whole entire trench line got obliterated by like a Moab nearly. But moving us on out of that, we also were able to see that down here in the 53rd Mechanized Brigade, they were able to defend themselves quite well in this direction. So this is the Ukrainian POV of what's going on their end. And I have a feeling we'll probably have to mute this because there's probably music in it. But here's the clip. There is. So we can see that they spotted the drone. They're firing at it, attempting to shoot it down. And they're shooting and they're firing. Looks like the drone was able to evade the first volleys of rifle fire. But we see that the Ukrainians are still spotting the drone as it's flying overhead and are still trying to take it down before it can come and get them. And they got
What
it!
weapon is this guy using? Is this guy using? Is that an AR?
I think so. It's probably a Ukrainian-made one, but they actually shot the drone down.
Oh wow! I was mentioning that because I've been hearing some reports that apparently there's like a new thing, like in the Ukrainian military for the most part. It's considered a very prized thing if you can get your hands on like one of the commercial U.S.-made AR-15s for the most part, especially like the higher-end brands and stuff. Like if you can find yourself like a Daniel Defense or something like that, that's considered like, oh, they've been kitted at this point. And it's like a contest to try to get those weapons for the most part. Apparently, it's like reserved for the people that I guess deserve them the most or something, but if you get one, you're considered very lucky.
Man, honestly, I haven't heard about that, but American-made ARs are of pretty high quality, especially ones from companies like FN Herstal, Daniel Defense, Colt, other companies like that. They're really high quality, exceptionally high quality. I have an FN M4 of my own, and I have to say, I swear by it. It's a great M4.
I have a Daniel Defense M4A1, which is absolutely fantastic. A workhorse, per se.
Man, they did pretty good work shooting down these drones.
Also, by the way, I see some people mentioning this, by the way. I want to address this real quick. The reason why I haven't shouted this out as breaking news is that I'm a little bit skeptical about it because of the timing. There are reports coming out that allegedly the U.S. and Iran are now discussing terms for a potential 45-day ceasefire. But here's the problem, folks. It's Sunday night, and right now the futures are open, and tomorrow morning the market's open. So that's my problem with that. It seems to be every Sunday night we're hearing a piece of news that comes out like that, and I'm beginning to wonder if they're really based in reality or not. That's why I'm beginning to wonder. That's why I haven't reported that so far. I did see it, but I haven't reported it for that reason. So I'm skeptical, and maybe it's true possibly, but the Iranians just came out today and vowed to keep the strait closed. I mean, why would they be talking all of a sudden? It seems to be a little fishy.
I'm telling you, I'm discrediting all of that from this point on. That's happened every single weekend before Monday, every single time without fail, and it's never been true. And also, I mean, even the president gets involved in that to kind of like some extent, because he always has really positive news to say on Saturday and Sundays, and then when Monday comes around again, then it's back to the normal business as usual if the war is going to keep going until it can end, sort of a thing. So I'd be honest with you, I'm taking those stories with an absolute grain of salt because we've seen this happen every single weekend 5 times in a row now, and there's no way in hell that this one's going to be the exception to the norm that's been proven at this point. So I hope that addresses that well, in my opinion, because that's what I'm thinking at the moment. But we were able to see that near to the Konstantinivka and Pokrovsk direction, some more Russian forces, were hit a little bit too hard. We also got to see that down in the Donetsk area, the Ukrainians were able to hit the Staropishchevskaya thermal power plant, and it caused a blackout.
Света нет. Похоже, во всем городе. Что-то где-то прилетело, наверное. И я, правда, тут не слышал. Но, судя по всему...
Oh,
What the?
What the hell? Bro, someone on the ground just stubbed their toe and went, ah! Bro, it's like, listen.
Судя по всему...
That is a person, dude. That is a person.
That's a person, man. That's not a bird. That's an actual person.
Где-то что-то произошло. Ну что, нам не привыкать.
Moving us on from that clip, we also were able to see the complete blackout in basically the whole metro area. Donetsk, Makivka, and also Mariupol, which isn't a part of the larger Donetsk metropolitan area, are in complete energy blackouts because the Ukrainians have hit the energy grids within this area. And everybody's saying it's a crow. You're sapping the fun out of it, folks. It's funnier to think that that was a person. It probably was a crow. But it's funnier to think it was a person. It was a man. But anyways.
It could have been a shanking.
It could have been, man. It could have been. Give me your money. But look at the blackout.
I don't know why I found the shanking so funny, but also by the way, there's music playing this, but I don't know why I found the shanking so funny. I shouldn't laugh at stuff like that.
Man, I'm not gonna lie, man. There could be like the faintest sound of music somewhere. You could hear like a violin string going, music, like it's like oh. But anyways, with that, we also saw another clip from Makivka showing us the complete blackout.
The dogs of war are back at it again.
Oh my god, man! I just saw someone make the funniest joke about the blackout. Hold up, I gotta go get this thing again.
Oh, what?
Man, I just saw someone make a joke on Howard Dean. I'm not gonna lie, man. It's on point. We're gonna go to the caucus, and then we're gonna go to the Washington, and then we're gonna go to the White House. Come on. Oh man, I timed it wrong.
Oh man, you messed it all up.
Hold up. I might be able to do it right this time. We're gonna go to the caucus, and then we're gonna go to Washington, and then, and only then, we're gonna go to the White House.
Я, правда, тут не слышал. Но, судя по
Oh,
всему...
come on. Hey! Like,
It was so late. Man, I tell you what.
forget it.
Oh
I'm
my
not doing
God.
that again. Like, I'm not doing that again. It was a good joke, though. It did sound like the Howard Dean scream. I'm not going to lie. That's when someone said that, I was like, oh my God, it did. But anyways, here's another clip from Mariupol showing the complete power blackout as well.
No electricity, bliat. It's a dark night out here, as you can see. Not a creature is stirring. Not even a mouse, and not even.
No, I am all это крылы, что зацели. Man,
It
honestly.
turns out we love living in the dark. It's a new Russian way to survive, bliat.
Blah, 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 blah. But moving us on down into the Novorossiysk front, the Ukrainians were also hitting some Russian drones. Actually, the Russian drones were targeting Ukrainian drones in this area, like this Baba Yaga on the ground. We're also able to see them hit this drone up here, this other Baba Yaga here. You know, you would think with the Russians hitting all these Baba Yagas, they might be doing well, but crazily enough, they're getting pushed back pretty badly in this area.
It looks like they're losing big league.
Boy. Moving us on down and into the area of the very southern part of Novorossiysk front, we also saw the Ukrainians destroy the Spirit 030 system, which is a new communication system for the Ruski army, boy.
Do you think that thing works properly with the camo literally blocking the parabolic dish?
I don't think so. I don't think this thing works at all.
That might actually interfere possibly with the thing. I just have a hunch.
Man, I'm not going to lie, man. I don't think it's working either. But with that, folks, that is actually all of the news that we had for the day. We didn't really get any reports out of the Inner Hadar area or the Kherson front, so that actually wraps up our frontline analysis and coverage in Ukraine and also for the entirety of the world. And I've got to say, folks, that I thank you all massively for being here for an entire 2 hours and 16 minutes with us as we have covered all the breaking news that came out from around the world. It's absolutely incredible and a high honor to know that we are able to cover this news for each and every single one of y'all. It's really something else as well, folks, to know how far the channel has come over such a period of time, because I'll tell y'all something, folks, that blew me away before we went live on air, and Matthew broke the news to me, and I just thought that this was the craziest thing. So back when we were kids, I never really was a big fan of Monty Python. I never got to watch any of their stuff, but I was a big fan of one of the people who was in Monty Python called John Cleese, who did this sideshow after Monty Python kind of broke apart, called Faulty Towers. And I thought when I was in like 10th grade that was the funniest show that had ever run on air. And it turns out that one of Matthew's posts that was put out today was retweeted by none other than John Cleese, which is the craziest thing that I've ever seen. Really crazy, honestly, to think that like folks like John Cleese, which I gotta say love his comedy work, are putting out stuff like that. I mean, it's really absolutely crazy.
It's nuts. I saw that come across my phone. I was like, what in the world? It's like John Cleese reposted the post about the Novorossiysk attack that I made earlier and posted a picture of what had happened to it and stuff like that. And I was like, what in the world? It's like, it is wild. Like, I'm like, I know it's just a repost, but it's very cool to the fact that the guy's even looking at our page. That's pretty cool. Because I watched Faulty Towers too. I thought it was pretty good. So I was like, that's pretty cool.
Let's see here. I think I have the one from us. Oh yeah, here it is. And let me show you really quickly. There he is. I thought that was just crazy, honestly, because like I've always thought like he was like one of the funniest people who ever did like television comedy. You know, like, kind of like what's his name, Matthew Rowan Atkinson, who's also really funny from the UK. And I was like, oh my
Oh, yeah,
god,
yeah.
that's crazy. You know, like I can't believe it. You know, John Cleese reposted one of our things today. Like, you know, it's just cool in that way. I was like, that's really neat. So I gotta say, you know, it's really crazy to think how far it's coming because our Twitter is almost seems like everyone on the planet's looking at the Twitter these days, and also it looks like everyone's watching the YouTube as well because we're up in the top 10s almost these days on YouTube in America for viewership. And I got to say that it's really been something to come this far with all of y'all, and it's also crazy to think that many of y'all have been here for years. I mean, a lot of y'all have been here with us almost since the start, and we came all the way from being a small channel with a couple of thousand live viewers every night, which is humongous in its own right, to now we're one of the largest channels that we can really see out there as far as live streaming daily news. And I've just got to say, we're entirely honored and appreciative that so many of y'all have been on that journey with us, and I've got to say that we're very honored to have had all of y'all along with us as we've covered the news every single day for years now. And so a humongous thanks to every single one of y'all once again for watching tonight, and make sure to stick around, folks, because we're about to be getting into the question segment where we get to talk about pretty much anything and everything except for religion, politics, climate change, and whether the A-10 is relevant in modern warfare or not. We're going to be getting to, I think, a couple of super chats here first, because I think we've had a very small number of them, and we're also going to be calling off any top donors that we've had in between the last segment and this one. So Matthew, who are those top donors?
Okay, so the fundraiser is currently sitting just shy of $3,800 raised, which is well over $1,000, well beyond the goal. So a huge shout out to everybody once again for helping us to hit that goal. And also a huge shout out to Hal Rose, who's doing a $333 donation and also helped us to get even farther up there with that goal right there. So thank you very much, Hal, for the massive donation to the fundraiser, and a huge shout out to everybody for donating tonight. And that is the top donors of the last segment right there. So Enforcer, what say you?
And a humongous thanks to everyone who supported the fundraiser tonight. Once again, y'all are helping out tremendously. The USO helps out people who are currently serving overseas and helps to keep up their morale. And it's an absolutely amazing piece of work that they do, and it's an absolutely amazing piece of help that y'all have done to help them to keep their work going for our armed forces around the world and those in the Middle East right now. So a huge thanks to all of y'all so much once again. And with that in mind, folks, it is time for us. It's time for us to move on into the question segment proper. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so getting into our Morse code decoders first, and then getting into our super chats, and then our live chat questions. We have the entire roster of decoders tonight. We have Paul, Kevin, Mason, Joni, Norm, Arabelle, Heroic, Fluffiness, Coach Kovateric, Sire, and Brian. They said the Morse code says, Iran is, I guess, going to get turned into a charring pile of coal. Russia is right now, LMAO, LLT, LSA.
And ding, ding. And that's the sound of money. Y'all got that dead on the nail. That is a Morse code message of the night. And holy moly, I gotta tell y'all, folks. I gotta tell y'all, that's absolutely crazy. Oh, Briaka. And I gotta say a humongous thanks to all of y'all once again in the Lee Springer Cinema Corps for getting that Morse code message correct. It's truly amazing to know that y'all understand Morse code and decipher it for the audience to hear every night. And so a huge congrats to y'all once again. And with that, let's just get to our questions.
All right. And also, by the way, I see a lot of people talking about what they did on Easter and stuff. I see East Malibu said, thank you guys for working on the holiday. Things were closed today. We actually did get out. Like, I made the short war video earlier today, which took up my entire morning, because it always does. It's always a bit of a process to make that. But we actually went out today and went for an Easter hike and got up to our highest elevation yet out here on the Wasatch Front. I think we got up to about 700 feet of elevation, roughly, which was a pretty decent hike. And got up pretty tall. I was trying to actually go get some of the pictures I have from it right here, at least of the landscape itself, to show y'all what it looked like. But I really didn't take too many pictures of the landscape, it doesn't look like. But I do have some pictures from the other day, though. I can share a couple of those.
Here it is.
Oh, there, look at that. Somebody did a 360 up there. Yes, where I was literally standing right there, exactly where this person is standing on that rock right there earlier today. So that is it. I'm grabbing a couple of pictures right here so I can see what we're talking about. It was pretty beautiful day out there for the most part. So let's see. I can only send these two, it looks like. It's only going to be these. So let me send these over Discord real quick. And they're coming over right now. They're on the way. This is of a different trail, by the way. It's not the exact same one. So show them those two right there. This is a trail we went on the other day. It's the Bonneville Shoreline Trail for the most part. So
oh yeah,
let's see.
right here, yeah, the rocks.
So you can see it. I can't see it.
Yes, I would have to share my whole screen with you, and for you to hear audio, I can only share like a tab or a certain window. So right now we're looking at the first picture.
So yeah, that's the rocks right there. That's the Bonneville Shoreline Trail that connects around to the area which we were just looking at on Google Maps. Right there, pretty cool spot by the way. It's like huge boulders, like you walk in between them and stuff. Really, really cool. But we went to a different spot today that was actually much higher elevation. So we've been doing those back to back for the most part. It's really good to get outside. And honestly, these days it's really good to get outside to try to take your mind off all the global instability that's going on. Because even though it doesn't affect people day to day, it does affect you mentally, or at least it does to me to a certain degree, and it's good to get a reset because when you're hiking, it's hard to think about stuff like what's happening globally because you're too busy trying to, basically not slip down the side of the mountain and stuff like that. So it's pretty fun. But Enforcer, what say you?
I have to say, folks, it was a really fun day today. I've been telling Matthew because I got to tell y'all, folks, I've become obsessed with trying to get as high up on the mountain as I can. So every single day I'm telling Matthew, I'm like, today we're going to shoot for an even higher altitude. So today we actually got up to 700 feet. Just about. It's a little bit give or take. It might have been 710 feet or 690, but for the best I could tell, it was very close to 700. And so we started off, like, just to show you all this, because this is a little interesting thing. So the trail starts over here in this parking lot, and you have to make it all the way from this parking lot, all the way up to where we were, where that picture was taken right here. And that was actually 700 vertical feet of elevation gain, and we did that in about, I think it was an hour of climbing. The whole thing took us, actually, come to think of it, actually, Matthew, it wasn't an hour of climbing to get up to this thing. It was an hour overall round trip, actually.
I think it was.
Yeah, so we actually got up here in like 30 minutes. Probably a little bit longer than that, probably like 35 minutes or so. So we actually were like busting ass, honestly, like come to think of it, because we did about 700 feet of vertical elevation gain in about 30 minutes or so. Which, I mean, honestly, I mean, that's not too bad. If we kept up that sort of pace, we could do 1,400 feet in about an hour, like of just straight vertical climbing, and that's not bad at all. So, hell, honestly, man, if you come to think of it, I mean, we really had some good stamina there. If we were doing 1,400 feet an hour and we were able to keep up that pace, hell, we could get all the way up to the top of Lone Peak and back down probably in a day. If we started off at the rising of the sun and the setting of it, we could probably get all the way up and down that thing.
Yeah, well, the farther you go, though, the more your endurance starts to wear down. So everything that used to be simple, like at a lower altitude, becomes harder because your endurance is starting to sort of wane off a little bit. So it gets a little sketchy when you get higher up. That's really more of a overnight backpacking type thing. I'm trying to do that in one day. You're going to get in some trouble.
Oh yeah, I know. But I'm just saying though, in theory, it's like if we were able to keep up that stamina the whole way, we could get all the way up there and back down in a day. And to give you all an idea here, the top of Lone Peak is 7,000 feet from the base. So it's quite a good bit of climbing there. Like some other mountains here in America, like while they're higher, you generally start climbing on them at a higher elevation. So like a 14,000 foot mountain, you could start the climb at 10,000 feet above sea level, meaning you only have to do 4,000 feet of climbing. For this one, you have to do 7,000 feet of climbing from the start. So what we did today was 10% of the mountain summit from where we were at the parking lot to up here. And I gotta say, folks, it was a really cool little hike, and it's also really cool because the higher up you get, you can turn around and see where you were. Like we were literally right down there, and you can see how far you came, which is really cool. And it's like, oh my God, we're getting so high up here. And it's just really exciting, honestly. So we're probably going to keep trying to tackle trails like these because I've got to tell you, folks, I am absolutely addicted to trying to get higher up the mountain. Like, absolutely. Like, I'm just dedicated to that. Today was the highest we ever made it, which was about 700 feet. And we could have gone on farther, but I'm wearing the slickest damn tennis shoes that exist in the world. Like any rock, any pebble on the trail, the shoes just start sliding. And we're kind of like a little bit concerned. Maddie got new shoes that are for kind of like hiking and stuff, and so they grip a lot better. But we're kind of concerned that if I ever get on a tricky part of the trail where there's a lot of rocks, my shoes just might give out from under me and just slide me right off the side of a mountain. So that's why we're not really going much higher, because we could have gone higher today. But we generally are wanting to not see that I end up in the local news as a fatality on the mountain from sliding off a trail and then falling to my death because of my shitty shoes. So I'll have to get new ones. Currently working on that right now. So I said, dude, get hiking shoes. You wouldn't believe the faces that we got when we first started doing this, because we went to another trail called the Bell Canyon Trail, same mountain, just further up north, right up here. And we went up there and everyone was like in all of this hiking gear with hiking poles, cleats and everything. And here Matthew was in his Hawaiian shirt and shorts and tennis shoes. And I was in shorts, a polo and tennis shoes. And everyone was just looking at us like, what the hell? Like, either they thought we were so experienced we didn't need the stuff, or they thought we were fools. And they probably thought we were fools because we were like way under equipped for what we were getting into that time. And we had to turn around and leave. But I definitely...
We didn't give a damn. We were going up that thing completely unprepared. We made it a pretty good ways up, surprisingly, with literally no preparation whatsoever. And on our way up, we saw a guy come down off the trail, and he had blood running down his face. Apparently, it busted his lip from the looks of it. He apparently slipped down and fallen. We found out a little further up now why that probably was, because you had like a whole bunch of ice and stuff like that up there. So you're supposed to bring cleats, hiking shoes, all that stuff right there. But we just went out there just to see what the hell it was about, and it was nothing crazy happened, but it wouldn't repeat it, definitely.
Oh man, I had a real ass buster though, folks. I slipped one time and I slipped and fell so hard. I left an imprint in the trail. Like I went down with some force. I mean, like it was something else. Because it was all ice up there. Like it was literally just like a several inch thick sheet of ice you're walking on, and with shoes with no friction whatsoever, you just go sliding everywhere. That was rough. I mean, that was really rough, but it was a really fun little hike. And that one, I think we got up to 575 feet of vertical elevation on. But this one was by far the tallest. Also, to give you all a little bit of an idea here, because this is a really cool thing. And let me make sure I'm getting this right, because I think I am. Oh, so let's see. Where is the... Let's see here. So actually, sadly, Matthew, I was telling Matthew that we were only 100 feet from the peak of the Eiffel Tower. That'd actually be wrong. We were about 300 feet away from the peak of the Eiffel Tower if this was a vertical building that we were climbing up. So I mean, we weren't at the height of the Eiffel Tower, but we got up to a pretty good height of it, is the best way to probably say that. And hopefully we'll be able to get to a point to where we can get up the 1,000 feet once I get good shoes, to where that's not the limiting factor. We can get up to 1,000 feet and then even higher than that, because I want to get to the top of the mountain. I want to get to the Lone Peak, or to the one further behind it, which will be probably easier to get to, which would be the Pfefferhorn, or some of the others around here. You know, another trail we need to do, Matthew? We need to do that trail that's up around here near these lakes. You know, that one that's like 3 miles round trip.
Yeah.
That one's a cool one. I saw that one in the hiking book that I got that shows like hiking trails around here. That one's picturesque, like extremely. That would be a really cool one to go take a look at. But enough of that.
Also, did you say that they let you? Are you allowed to bring like a weapon, like for example, like just mountain lions and stuff up there? And now the bears are a little more skittish, but I mean, still, if you have like food or something, you're setting up camp, the bears might want to come around. Do they allow you to bring like a weapon for defense?
As long as it's not an endangered wildlife protection area, yes. And I don't think any of that's an endangered wildlife protection area, but we'd have to check. But outside of that, the Forestry Service, according to what they published online, said that as long as you're following the applicable state laws wherever you are in a national forest, and as long as it's not in a protected endangered species area, you can carry a firearm.
Interesting. Yeah, honestly, if you get out there too far, like I feel like you might want to have something with you, because if a mountain lion's aggressive, I don't know how aggressive these animals are, like out there and stuff. So I see some people saying bear mace. I've got that too, as well. I've got that, but it just seems like if you set up camp or something and a bear is like really determined to come to your camp, and then all of a sudden you're in a bad spot, it seems like you might want some protection.
Yeah, probably. I would agree with that. But I don't think we'd be running into any trouble. I mean, this is right outside of Brighton, like this is literally just a little trail that wanders around out of Brighton and back. So I mean, it's not like there's going to be anything out there, And I bet you it's a very traveled trail because it's short. It doesn't have a whole lot of elevation. It's literally 3 miles round trip. And I mean, we knocked that out today on our own. just doing a little meandering. You know, I'm sure there's probably nothing up there that would be too bad. Now, on the other hand, though, if you wanted to go down here towards the Timpanogos Cave National Monument kind of an area, you remember we drove up in here by accident that one time, and it was literally like the wilderness. Now, I would feel like there's probably some down there because there's no living people in this area. But considering how close that is to Brighton, I bet you there'd be nothing up there.
Yeah, maybe not, possibly.
Maybe not. Hopefully not. Hopefully I'm not wrong. Y'all are gonna be hearing breaking news. Some dude got mauled by a bear, like right outside of Brighton. What are the odds? It's gonna be me. Like it's really gonna be me.
Breaking news! Breaking news!
Look, he's getting mauled by the bear. Like, look, he's like,
look, he's getting mauled.
oh man, dude. I mean, live feeded that would be pretty wild, though. I wouldn't want to be the person on the other end, though, with the bear. You know, like I wouldn't want to be there.
Man, if you find me in the forest with a bear, help the bear.
Oh, man, help the bear, man. No, you're gonna need some help. Like, but anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best that we can. Little fun aside there, but with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, so jumping into our super chat questions first, and then getting into our live chats. But first of all, I have to call off some more top donors. A big shout out to Chef Danny B, who threw in a 50, along with Fred Vreeman, who also threw in a 50 as well. And also it's Keith, who also put in a 50. Donations, that is, to the fundraiser. And we are just about $35 shy of hitting 4,000 right now. So fantastic work, and a huge shout out to y'all once again. But jumping into our super chat questions, this one is going to go to On the Seekers. And thank you very much for that $50 super chat, that is. Hey! And he said, in light of all the chaos, here's a little something lighthearted. Easter 1951, there was an Easter bunny outbreak when a girl named Alice fell into a rabbit hole. Keep up the fantastic work, and happy Easter, and don't fall down any rabbit holes, please.
Hey, thank you so much for the support, Una Seekers. And also, I think you're talking about Alice in Wonderland, the animated classic from Disney. And I think that was the year that it actually released in. Let me check that. Alice in Wonderland, Disney. And it was 1951. I can't show any of it. Y'all know what I'm referencing, though, because Disney would give us a cease and desist if we tried to show it. But outside of that, that is true. And I gotta say, Alice in Wonderland is probably one of my favorite animated Disney movies. It was just a really interesting one, I always thought. And I always found it really entertaining. And I gotta thank you so much for the incredible support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, Una Seekers, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. We wouldn't be able to make it possible. And we wouldn't be able to remember those sweet, sweet moments like Alice in Wonderland. But a huge thanks to you once again. I also hope that y'all have had a great Easter today. We've hardly even touched on that at all tonight, but I hope y'all have had a great one. We had a great one ourselves. I know that for sure because, you know, getting out there into the great outdoors and adventuring, there's quite truly nothing like it, folks. It really is something. Make sure to get outside, folks. Just, you know, bring some water with you so you don't drop of dehydration. But, you know, it's a great thing, and I gotta say, a wonderful Easter to be sure. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one is going to go to Duncan VR. And thank you very much, Duncan, for that $25 support all the way from down under in Australia. And Duncan said, Baba quack. Zelensky says he's got the cards. The cards. How are the insects doing there? Any crickets? Let's bring out the marmots. Sir, no respect, sir. They said no respect around here. He has no respect. As you can see here, he says, fat-ass marmot. They said he's a fat-ass bastard, this guy right here. Look at him. He's got a lot of subject matter there. Looks like he's been eating Twinkies. They call him Twinkies. They call him that for a reason. They don't just call it a Twinkie. They said cream-filled Twinkies, that's what they call him. They call him the rat. They call him the rat, sir, the rat. That's what they call him. Those open the effing straight. But anyways, the Enforcer, what say you?
We have everything under control. 2 hours later. Up in the straighter, we blow up everybody. It's like, okay, it's like, I don't think this is under control, but, oh, hello there. Hey, it's Alan the Marmot. Hey.
Oh, hello there, Governor. I think you was cueing me in to do the other voice, yeah? I've got split personalities, Governor. It's a strange thing to go between a madman of one sort to a madman of a different one. A madman of a furry variety, it does appear. You've done a great travesty to our majesty, the king. He's been travesty. They said something about a no kings march. I said, what about no kings? Well, our whole government's based on kings. We have to have kings. and queens too. But tell us more, yeah, Governor.
Aw, man. Due to me having no content on that dude anymore because I just don't even know about him or care about him, I don't even know what to do with the fly anymore. I mean, we have no new original comment for the fly, because it's a specific person. I don't even know what to make. Oh, there you go. Oh, hey, look, it's a second marmot. It's a second L in the marmot. Oh, what do you do there, Governor? You just running around the point. What do you mean? You just Governor. You average breakfast. I don't even know what this thing's saying. I don't even know.
Boo! This guy stinks.
Wait, hang on, man. My leg! My leg!
Yeah, that's what those Iranian special forces were talking about after the special forces got done mangling them. My leg! It's like, man, I saw some pictures coming out of that situation that was a doozy. I almost reposted by accident. It was very graphic, and I definitely was glad I didn't repost it because I almost accidentally did because I think I've gotten slightly desensitized to some of the stuff coming out. But my goodness, some of those Iranian special forces guys, they got some very bad things that happened to them. And also some of the people that were looking, some of the civilians that were looking for the pilot apparently met a bad fate too, for the most part. So I tell you.
Wait, hang on a minute. Hold on, man. Man, this is what the IRGC forces were like, man, when they went around that corner and they saw the U.S. Special Forces. They looked like this, and you just hear it in their head, like the music. Apremo pedomo. It's like the Special Forces are just whipping around with the M4 on them, man. It's like, it's over. Like, they're like, I don't know what to do, but this isn't the people we thought we were running up against.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it ended up bad. Oh, one thing that the Iranians will have to learn is they might have some leverage with the Strait of Hormuz, but don't play games with the special forces. That's never going to end well. And, it's kind of like, poking the pit bull with a stick. It's like eventually the pit bull is going to probably get loose from the chain. It's probably going to come after you and probably maul you. So it'd probably be wise not to poke him with a stick. So the Iranians might learn a lesson.
Man, meanwhile, man, that WSO landed on the ground. He did that for a couple of seconds, and then he went bulling it for the rock up there on the mountain.
Man, I'll tell you what, man, it was honestly, like, it was a masterful operation to get the guy back. But it was also kind of like the circumstances was kind of like a clown show. You've got the pilot up there under the rock, under the rubble or something like that, trying to hide. Talking about God is good. Out there with a sprained ankle. Then you have the civilians flooding up there to the area to go try to cash him as they're wanting to be greedy. And then you got the special forces setting up a whole forward operating base to go exfiltrate the guy. Then scuttling C-130s and blowing the hell out of the whole forward operating base. It's like, honestly, it was chaos. And the fact that nobody got hurt in the process was a miracle.
Man, that WSO was like that up there on that rock on that mountain, man. Like he was hanging tight, man. Like, honestly, I gotta say though, I mean, the luck of that, to find a rock like that to hide under in the middle of nowhere. I mean, he was I guess that's why he sent out that radio broadcast. Man, he got up there and he got in that rock and he pulled out that radio. He said, "God is good," and then the Air Force said, "Man, is that like an imposter or some shit? What the hell is that?" And then that guy just sitting there. He's like, "If I hang tight, they'll come and get me." And then they sent out the entirety of, I guess, the whole of Delta Force. They sent out 100 guys to go find them. I mean, we literally sent an entire company of special forces at one time into a country to just ruck it out to that guy and grab. I'm honestly, it was one hell of an operation, I'll admit. But thinking about it, I'm not gonna lie, folks. It's kind of like comical. Like some elements of it, it would almost make like a comedy, drama, military action movie if you wrote that into a script.
And you saw the map where they set up the forward operating base. They set up the forward operating base to retrieve the pilot literally right under the Iranians' noses, right outside of Isfahan. So they set up a makeshift landing strip, all this stuff, and basically set up a base, literally right behind enemy territory in the middle of it, with the Iranians literally crawling all over the place, and somehow held it without any injuries or casualties the entire time, and then just scuttled the aircraft and then just left after that with no destruction of any U.S. aircraft, except for the ones we intentionally scuttled. So honestly, kind of wild.
Man, meanwhile, up there in the hills, man, there was some Iranian kid running around flipping rocks looking for, the critters that are around. He was going, la, 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 la. He flips to one that this guy's under. He goes, like he's like, and then the guy's like, and he like goes like running away, and the dad comes up. He's like, "What did you see?" And the kid's like, "Father, I saw some white dude and some olive drab like jumper." That was the Air Force pilot, Habibi. You let him get away. Man, it's like, honestly, man, I mean, like, I'll be honest with y'all, folks. I hope they make that into a movie someday, and I hope that they make it like, I hope they don't make it like over, like, militarized, where it's like, I'm a hardcore mother ever. I hope they kind of make it a little comedic, because I'm not gonna lie, there's some very comedic elements to this whole thing at this point. But I do have to say this though, the only reason why, folks, that we're joking and laughing about this whole thing and making fun of it is that everybody got out largely unharmed. I mean, the worst thing that happened is someone got a sprained ankle. If someone was actually wounded or killed in this thing, seriously, we wouldn't be making any fun of it at all. But I mean, really, since no one was harmed in this whole thing except for the IRGC and the besieged, which, you know, who gives a damn, it's a pretty funny sort of an outcome, and it's great to know that we got him out and it was a success.
Certainly.
Indeed. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $20 super chat from Fred Vreeman. Thank you very much, Fred, for that support. He said, great work again, Enforcers. And thanks also for hosting the USO fundraiser. And by the way, I still think about the A10 discussion, and it would be worth talking about.
Oh, Fred. With great power comes great responsibility. But beyond that, though, I'd have to say a big thanks to you for enjoying our work. And also, thank you so much for appreciating the USO fundraiser. Not a lot of people fundraise for the USO.
I was just thinking about something, not to interrupt, but I was just thinking, you know, he's Fred, but, you know, when he brought up the whole thing about the A-10, I think he's trying to be frank with us.
Hey, has anyone thought about giving you the Nobel? Like, is it like anyone thought about giving you the Nobel for like science and innovation? That was really smart right there. That was really smart. This is a smart.
Are you talking
guy.
about giving me the Nobel or Fred gets the Nobel?
No, you. I mean, that was really smart. There was a really smart connection there. Maybe this guy is actually Frank.
Could be. It could be Frank in disguise as Fred.
Maybe it's
Frank.
Frank
Somebody
Freeman.
said boo. Hey, wait a minute. Somebody said boo. Hey, watch it. Watch your mouth. Watch it. You see something? Here's the problem with people. Here's the problem. You make a good joke, like I just did right now. Some said the joke hadn't been heard before. Some said it's the best joke they've ever heard. That's what they're telling me. That's what they're telling me. You know, all the voices, they're all telling me this. I hear them from left, right, center, behind sometimes. Not too often, but sometimes. It's a strange thing, the way people just come in talking about boo. It's like they saw something that was a ghost. It's like they saw a ghost, sir. It's like they're seeing things. They're crazy. That's what they're telling me. They're crazy people. That's what they said boo.
Listen here, buddy. Ain't no ghosts around here for you to go boo at. There's only ghouls, all right? So get it straight. But anyway, so that, getting back to Fred Freeman's super chat here, I would say not a lot of people actually fundraise for the USO, and I like to fundraise for them a little bit, because everyone always goes, oh, well, you know, like the USO shows and stuff, like, what's the point of that? It's like, well, hell, I mean, you know, like a lot of people get a morale boost out of that stuff, you know, like people don't think about that, but it's like, you know, if you're in the middle of being deployed, and you've got nothing to do, and you sit in a little plywood Connex box playing on Xbox all day, and that's all you do when you're off duty. You know, off duty doesn't really exist sometimes in deployment. It's like, you know, whenever they bring out someone like, you know, The Rock or something like that, and a couple of comedians, and they bring them over for a show for everyone, I mean, that's pretty good stuff. I mean, you know, a lot, you know, it's better than nothing. You know, and I like to fundraise for the USO because they do little things here and there for the folks overseas that are deployed that increase their morale. And that's why I'm a big fan of trying to do fundraisers for the USO, even if a lot of other people like to do stuff for the veterans, because I think it's a great thing that we do get to support fundraisers that help out veterans, like the Gary Sinise Foundation and the Wounded Warriors Project. But I also think that we should be trying to help out the morale and help support the guys overseas in some way that we can. And the USO is a great way to be able to help out. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And a big thanks to you for your support, Frank Freeman. And with that, we're on to the next one. I'm just kidding with you, Fred, but a huge thanks to you once again.
We also attend from Jeremy Smith, and thank you very much, Jeremy, as well. He said, what if we were to clear and sanitize the coastline to build a great wall of Hormuz to keep them back? Thoughts? And also USO.
You know, that'd take a lot of Germex to sanitize that kind of an area. You know, like, I think that might be a little bit beyond our ability. How much Germex do we make a year? How much Germex do we make a year? Oh, let's see.
Why are you speaking like it's a state-run industry or something?
Why, you think Germex isn't run by the U.S. government?
No.
The hell is the matter with you? Like, apparently the numbers aren't disclosed publicly, sadly, by the way. Like, there's a good point, Matthew. I didn't think about that until I pulled it up. But I would say building a wall sadly wouldn't really fix our issues. Because right now the thing is that they're firing missiles. And we'd have to build like an exceptionally tall wall to be able to deal with those. And then they might just blow right through it, and eventually collapse it. So I don't think it'll work. One, because we don't have enough Germex, and two, I don't think we have enough bricks. But a big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Also have a $5 support from Heavenly, who said YouTube news channel that's Iranian says his dad is still in Tehran, said the huge number of cars weren't going after the weapons systems officer, and they were blocking the roads instead, so the IRGC couldn't get to him, and thoughts. Now, we're not trying to disparage anybody. Like, if somebody claims they have a source, I mean, we're not ones to call them liars or anything like that. I'm certainly not going to do that. But at the same time, though, it's not enough for us to go on to be able to make that connection there. All we know is there was a bounty out for the WSO, and tons of people from the nearby cities was rushing to the spot, and we saw people lurking around looking for the guy with flashlights. So to me, it seems like it's pretty obvious that they were looking for the WSO to get the money. The money, the bounty award, by the way, was enough to make an Iranian rich for life. That's how big the bounty was. So that might explain why people were rushing up there to go find the guy, is because it would literally like be hitting the lottery for the most part. So I just don't really buy that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree with Matthew. I don't really buy it a lot either. And also, my thing is, like, and I'm not trying to say or beef for anyone would say or say they're a liar, but here's my thing. If their dad is in Tehran, this happened at the very southern end of the country in the southwestern region. This would be like using me as a credible source for something that happened in Pennsylvania when I live in Utah. Or a better equivalent would be using me as a source for something that happened in Denver when I live in Salt Lake. I don't know what's going on in Denver. I mean, I could tell you probably what's going on around here that I can physically see in Salt Lake, but, Denver, I'd be clueless on what's going on over there right now. And another thing is that these guys drove down there in their cars, and then they got out and they went into the hillsides near to the roads. And if you're just trying to block the road and create a traffic jam to make it harder to get around, well, why did they get out of their cars with flashlights and go up into the mountains where this guy might be hiding at? Because that doesn't show that you're just trying to block the roadway. If you have a flashlight in the middle of the night and you're leaving the road and going into the mountains in the wilderness where this guy might be hiding, that looks very suspicious. I mean, a lot of people would say that gives a reasonable, articulable suspicion that they are in the process of trying to find the pilot. So, that's generally kind of like my 2 cents on it. Maybe we're just reading into it a little bit too much, but it seems to me like that might just be, largely going with a positive story that makes it look like everyone in Iran, hates the regime and likes the U.S. government. But I mean, if you have a bounty that's that big out, there's going to be a lot of people trying to cash in on that and thinking they might get lucky and just stumble upon the guy and be able to turn him in. So, I hope that addresses that well, at least in my opinion, but I don't really know about the validity of those claims myself. But with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Game Theory, who said, do you think the rescue of the downed pilot, let's see here. Sadly, I can't really read this one off because I don't know who that is, and also I'm not sure about the details of that story, so I don't want to say anything that I can't independently confirm on my own about a specific individual. But we do appreciate that support, though. We also have a 5 from Game Theory yet again, who said you need to do an LSA event, maybe a live stream on the mountaintop, and charge to pay for security.
I would love to do that, but sadly, I don't think we'd have any internet connectivity up there. And it's also a U.S. national forest. So they have a lot of restrictions about what you can and can't do to try and protect the forest and preserve it for future generations and to keep the wilderness of America healthy and generally thriving. So sadly, I don't really think we'd be able to do that. But it is a cool idea, though. I would love to do it. But the National Park Service would tell me no. And they make me real sad. Oh, Briaga. Thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Game Theory yet again, who said any altitude sickness when you hike. And I did get a little altitude sick a little bit when I first came out here. Mainly visiting is when I got it, because I actually went up to the high peaks up there at the top near Park City just to check it out, because I wasn't really sure where I was looking at. So I had to go check out the entire place. I got out of the car and walked a bit there and got a little bit altitude sick, but that was the only time I ever did. Ever since then, I was good to go. But Enforcer, what say you?
When I first moved out here, I actually got altitude sick pretty badly when I first moved in. And it took me a few weeks, I think it was like 2 or 3 to get over it, but I got over it pretty quickly. But the reason why I was probably very much affected by it is that I was wildly unfit when we came out here. I still am. So it takes me a little bit of a longer time to adjust, a longer time to climb up a mountain, stuff like that. Because for a while there, folks, about a year and a half ago, I actually was on a really big fitness deal off air, and I actually got pretty decently fit. But after that, a whole bunch of stuff happened in our personal lives, and it threw off the fitness schedule completely. Because, you know, not to get into a lot, but we were basically in like survival mode off air trying to manage a whole bunch of stuff. So I just completely stopped exercising and never really picked it back up. And I just got like wildly out of shape again after that. So generally that's why I was affected by altitude sickness, I would assume. And so it shouldn't affect you if you're of any decent physical fitness, which I would assume that you're probably way better off than I was when I moved out here. But a big thanks to you once again for support and help this channel to keep running. And I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
I also have a 5 from Red Tails, who said, "Hey there, I'm new here. I'm actually learning a lot from y'all. But do y'all think Iran will meet the president's deadline? And if not, what will happen next?" And I think that Iran is definitely not going to meet the deadline, actually. I don't buy the whole deal about them negotiating. Now, I will gladly be proven wrong if it comes out that a deal was reached before Tuesday. I will gladly, take back my words. But over the past few weeks, we've seen this off and on, left and right, and largely speaking, it hasn't panned out. And also, Iran literally just said today they're not going to reopen the strait. And in fact, they're going to keep it closed permanently to cause maximum damage to the Western economies, which doesn't sound like a nation ready to negotiate a peace deal to me. So they're not going to meet the deadline. The only question to me is the U.S. going to carry it out this time, or are they not? Because they've made threats like this a little less severe, I will say, in the past, but they didn't carry them out. They sort of stalled for the most part, I would say. So we'll have to see if this one actually gets carried out. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that I don't think they're going to be meeting the deadline. I don't know what's going to come after that. We might back off of the threats that are being given right now and try and reposition again, which at this point would be like the 9th time. But generally, I don't think they're going to be meeting our demands. But I hope that does address it the best I can. I also see some people saying that my analogy is pretty rough. Let me try and explain why I was saying that, because I think I might have not explained enough context where people might be missing it. If we're looking at video and picture evidence for something, there's a lot of facts that we can ascertain from thousands of miles away, like we are here on air. Like if we see a whole bunch of people pull over on the side of the road in their cars, go climbing into the mountains with flashlights, we can get an idea they're searching for something, and they have to be searching for that pilot, because that's the only thing that all of these people will be driving in to come and look for, because it's the only thing of interest in that area. Now, on the other hand, though, if I'm supposed to be an eyewitness report, and like, for example, Denver gets attacked by the Islamic Republic of Iran, and they send over bombers and they're bombing Denver, and someone's saying, "Oh my God, what's happening in downtown Denver?" I'm not going to be able to tell y'all reliably from Salt Lake City as an eyewitness what people are doing on the ground in Denver at that moment and what their intentions are, because I'm not in Denver to know. I'm not a primary source at that point from Denver to say what people are doing hundreds of miles away from me. I'm a secondary source, or I'm guessworking everything from Salt Lake City. And that's really the claim that I was trying to make, because someone that they know might be in Tehran, but how does that person in Tehran know what the intentions are of hundreds of people who are several hundred miles away from them in the middle of the desert? And that person really wouldn't be able to know that easily, because it's not like they're able to just walk around the side of the road and ask all those people that are not there with them, because they're in a whole different part of the country, what are your intentions right now? Are you trying to block the road to impact the IRGC, or are you whipping out into the mountains with flashlights to go and try and find this dude? And they really wouldn't know that. That's really what I was trying to explain a minute ago. So I hope I was able to clarify that a little bit, because I think I may have made that statement to where some people didn't understand what I was trying to get at. Like, we're using video and picture evidence and just looking at what we can see in the videos to get an idea and assume what they're doing. but saying to being someone hundreds of miles away and then saying what those people are doing, I mean, you really can't do that because we don't know what their intentions are. That person might not know what their intentions are. All we can do is look at videos and deduce what they're doing. And if they're in the mountains with flashlights, they're certainly not doing a traffic jam. They're looking for someone. So with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next live chat question is going to go to Mary Jacobs, who said, is Afghanistan and Pakistan still fighting their war as well?
Yes, it's generally a side conflict at this point. They're currently negotiating in China for an end to the conflict, but the Pakistanis have come out on top, so we're probably going to see a decent amount of concessions that the Taliban has to make to Pakistan. Or, in the best case scenario for the Taliban, they might be able to get a white peace, which means that everything returns back to the way it was before the war started. Or that would actually be called status quo antebellum, which means that it returns back to the way it was before the war. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a question from Wrath of Cat, who said, do you all know how many Allied ships the U.S. has in the Strait of Hormuz at the time?
In the Strait of War, actually we have none, because it's too dangerous for them to go in there right now. So in terms of Allied warships, 0 are in the Strait of Hormuz from us or even our other allies around the world. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a question from Dr. Quinn, who said, any news tonight about Iran's pending water shortage and the U.S. war strategies around it?
That's a good question, actually. Any news? And also, happy Easter to you, by the way, Dr. Quinn. And also, any news tonight about Iran's pending water shortage? Well, we generally know that it's affecting Tehran and Mashhad the most from what we've heard. And also, I don't really know how U.S. war planning is going around that. We know that they're going to attack desalination plants, but that more so affects coastal cities from what we know, near to the Persian Gulf, more so than it affects most cities or country areas that are up here in the northern part of the country. So I hope that does address it the best I can. That's really all I would know at the moment, but I haven't really heard a lot about U.S. war planning pertaining to the water shortage ever factoring in. So with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a question from AF Kaplan, who said, assuming the U.S. can succeed in opening the Strait of Hormuz, how long before the flow of oil through that area and oil prices stabilize? And I think it would be pretty quick, actually. If the U.S. could pull a rabbit out of the hat and somehow take Iran's leverage away and reopen the Strait of Hormuz and actually keep it open and clear it of the mines, then I think it would come down quick because oil prices are largely speculative, as we've learned over the last few weeks. So I think most people around the world would realize, oh, look, the corridor's wide open. So this is very good news right here. There's pretty much no more threat to oil shipping, and it should come down pretty quick. So I think it'll be pretty rapid. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that it probably would be quite quick. It probably would be within the next few days after the United States was able to send warships through the strait safely that we would see the first tankers start making their way out of the Hormuz and into the Hormuz. It would probably be really quickly afterwards because a lot of companies would be putting pressure on their captains to commence their voyages. Because these shipping companies are losing their shirts right now with these ships sitting idle and not carrying cargo and having to pay the crews and so on. So they would probably be underway quickly, and then the oil prices would stabilize then probably over the next 2 months and probably return back to pre-war norms or close to pre-war norms, because we wouldn't be seeing a major lack of available oil, just a gap of it out there in the world markets at that point. It would be returning, and it would be keeping, hopefully, a steady flow from that point on. So I hope that does address that the best I can, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Plant Zero, who said, what do y'all think the chances are that we see a nuke being used in this conflict? I will say I saw a lot of people today interpreting the president's remarks as nuclear threats toward Iran. I personally didn't take them that way. Now I will admit, when you say you're going to, when the president said he's going to blow up Iran and also said he's going to make them live in hell, I mean, you could, in some alternative universe, interpret that as a nuclear threat toward Iran, but I didn't personally get that impression from it, really. So I would say the chances of a nuke being used is probably very low. If anything were to happen, the chances of a U.S. or Israeli airstrike on the site of the Bushehr nuclear power plant, there would probably be higher odds of something like that tragically happening instead of a nuke being used. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say the chances of a nuclear weapon being used is fairly low because that would be absolutely idiotic to use one. Iran is a non-nuclear country. They do not have a nuclear weapon. And so using a nuclear weapon against them in the current situation we're seeing right now would be completely unjustifiable to the entirety of the international world. It would be condemned internationally. And not only that, it'd be opening up Pandora's box, because then we're giving everyone else a excuse to use nuclear weapons at the drop of a hat. So, the war is going bad in Ukraine, Russia will just nuke Kyiv. China goes to war with Taiwan, and it isn't won within the first few weeks. They just nuke Taipei. And then we're seeing that that's going to be opening up a whole world that we wouldn't want to live in at that point. It would be dangerous to live in a world like that. So I would have to say the chances are low, and they should be low. If they aren't low and it's seriously being considered, then actions need to be taken to ensure that that person does not make that kind of a call, because that would be the worst call that could be made in the war at all. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a live chat question here. Let me reorganize the spreadsheet real quick, though. I need to do a little A to Z. We have one here from Justin Green, who said, did any weapons get to the Iranians? We supposedly were supplying to them, and appreciate the time and diligence.
Generally, from what we've heard, most of them were just kept by the Kurds. Generally, we don't think so. But that also might be a cover story, and we're giving them to the Kurds inside of Iran. It's just that we're not letting the Iranians know that that's the case, and so we're saying that the Kurds stole them when they might not have stolen them. So we'll have to see, but I generally believe that they probably haven't been handed over. And so with that, we are on to the, crazily enough, the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Mason Miami, who said, I have a question about destroying oil ports. How hard is it to pump crude oil, and couldn't I pump it with a garden hose and a fire truck myself?
It's actually not that easy, sadly. You really can't pump oil incredibly easily, especially in large volumes. That's why they have specialized pumping stations and stuff of an industrial scale, because they can handle a larger volume. So with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
This one goes to Pookie, who said, what would be a good strategy for the U.S. to open the strait? And what challenges are we facing with Iran's ability to keep it locked down? And what do you think we can do to reopen it?
Generally, we would have to clear out all of the anti-ship threats, so the air drone threats, the surface drone threats, and then the anti-ship missile launchers as well on the coastline. Then after that, we would have to deal with the mines. We would have to demine the area. And of course, once again, folks, when I say deal with them, I don't mean destroy all of them. I just mean destroy 80% or 90% of their weapons capabilities within this area, because at that kind of a threat level, it's now safe enough for U.S. destroyers to pass through the strait. They will still be under fire, but not that much, and it'll definitely be manageable. And then you start conducting convoy escort duties, which would largely reopen the strait, and then continued air efforts, 24/7 air efforts covering those destroyers and the convoys would ensure that anyone who tried to roll out into the open to be able to fire at these U.S. forces and convoys would be destroyed and hit once they rolled out into the open to be destroyed. So generally, I would say that probably is our best strategy in my opinion, and that's the one that I think that they should be doing right now, and sadly they're still not. So with that, someone's about to come in here, what do you know more than the president? Well, I don't know, maybe a good bit, honestly, at this point, I don't know. But anyways, with that, we are on into the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Matthew Goodman, who said, why haven't the Middle East states not gone on the offensive against Iran? And we don't need NATO, but it would be nice if some of the other countries would come and help the United States.
I would say generally the reason why is probably because they're scared that the Iranians will start attacking infrastructure throughout their countries that could lead to significant damage. Like, for example, hitting desalination plants, power plants, such things. And they're thinking, maybe if we don't get involved in the war, they won't hit them. And if they do, they won't hit them that badly. Or, if we stay out of it, they won't hit us that badly. That might be what they're thinking. And that might be why they're not wanting to join into the conflict. NATO would actually be a humongous help because Britain actually has mine sweeping vessels. I was having to think of the name there, sadly, for a minute. But mine sweeping vessels are present in the UK. The French have a very good navy. So do the Italians and the Spanish. And if we could generally get a whole bunch of countries together in NATO to come down and help us, because we can't get the NATO alliance to operate as NATO offensively. The charter doesn't allow it. But we can get a whole bunch of allied nations in NATO to take individual actions of their own to come down there and help us, and it would definitely be a humongous benefit. Because the Middle Eastern nations, it would be great to see them help out. It would be great to see NATO help out. But at the end of the day, I have to tell everyone, because I cannot emphasize this enough, the United States and Israel started off this war on our own. It is entirely at the independent opinion and decision of any other country whether they want to join or not. If they don't want to join, no skin is lost. We already started this war with them not being an active participant and went into it knowing that. So that's not their fault. And they're not to blame because they're not joining a war that they didn't start and they may have not been a fan of. Every country has a right and a decision to be able to support a war or not. Much like the current president of the United States seems to have an issue with Ukraine and not wanting to support them at all, the United States technically has a right to do that. And while people in NATO might not like that, you can't take punitive actions against the United States for making its own foreign policy decisions, much like we can't on our allies in NATO in the Middle East. They weren't really a big fan of being directly involved in it, so, you know, whether they want to join or not, it would be great to have them join, but if they don't want to, we can't punish them, and we're still on our own like we were on the very first day of the war. So I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, folks, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank you all so much for watching. It's been an honor, and it's been a pleasure. It's really been a pleasure. There was about 27.7 thousand people here tonight, and around 190,000 people have watched this stream since it started. I got to thank you all greatly for watching. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to be able to run the stream for each and every single one of y'all, and the fundraiser has done incredibly well tonight, and we're always happy to see it. We love to see it. And so with that, we will see you all on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 48 hours of the news from around the world, and if there is a short war video to be made, I will be the one making it tomorrow. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini, Haram Slava, long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, a huge shout out to the almost 200,000 people that joined us by the end of the stream tonight. We appreciate every single one of you for choosing us as your news source. And also a huge shout out to everybody, by the way, for helping us to reach over $4,000 raised on the fundraiser for the USO. Fantastic work once again, and we do appreciate that from everybody in the audience as well. But we will be seeing you all on Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern for the next nightly War News stream, and maybe midday tomorrow for a short war video as well. But also a big shout out to Christopher Bailey, by the way, who just threw in a $50 donation to the fundraiser, and I just want to give a big shout out to Christopher before we went off the air. But in the meantime, though, we'll see you all on Tuesday, and of course, Slava Ukraine, Hiram Slava, get some rest, and good night.
On me shall stand.